Okay, we are live. How does this look? How does this look? Meh. All right. What's up, guys? It's Ziti, and today we finna do this fucking live stream. Yeah, pineapple. What's up? Just doing the pop-out chat. Wow, did you literally just start this? Yes, I just barely did. Sup, Zanya? Hold on, I gotta fucking put my dog in my parents' room. I'll be right back. If anyone joins, tell them that's what I'm fucking doing. All right. Hello, everyone. Hello, Tamid. How y'all doing today? Now, I'm going to send out a link so you can join Utilitarianism for the Win. I'm kind of confused as to what utilitarianism is. I'm pretty sure it's like consequentialism, but you like more specific, like you care about consequences if it is, good to your goal or something. It's something along those lines. I've actually become more of like a deontologist lately. But, the greatest happiness for the greatest number. Yeah, I don't know if I'd agree to that. Because look, let's say like the whole of China wanted to like kill me, and the only way to like protect myself from being killed is to nuke China. That would completely fuck up happiness, but I'd still do it. That wouldn't be good for the overall net well-being because they'd all try to fucking all it would be is me dying rather than them, but I would still fucking nuke them. Because it's just in self-defense, and I think it'd be morally justified to defend yourself even in a situation like that. So I don't think I could say I subscribe to like the net well-being bullshit. Not that it's like invalid or anything, just probably not something I'd agree to. All right. So I'm going to put the link in the chat. What's up, eyes? There, I spammed it. Pineapple says turtle. So yeah, eyes, feel free to join. Anyone feel free to join. Just if your mic is really crinkly, I'm gonna tell you to like like, or if it's like making a lot of noise, I'm just gonna be like, you need to fix that. Why do you think it's okay to nuke China just because they want to harm you? Well, that's not exactly what I said. I said nuke China if it's necessary in, preventing them from harming me. I'm not sure if I described that, perfectly. But if China was going to kill me, I knew that they're coming after me and I have to nuke them to, defend myself, then I'm going to fucking nuke them. Because like, and I know like people like vegan gains are like, oh, I'm not infinitely valuable. It's like, yeah, but I'm not just gonna get fucked if I have the chance not to. Nuke people who like sweet potatoes and mangoes. Well, I'll nuke people who like mangoes, but not people who like sweet potatoes because sweet potatoes are good. But yeah, I'll agree to that. I don't like mangoes either. But yeah, if I have the chance not to get cucked, I'm not gonna get cucked. It doesn't matter what I have to do, I'll do it. I'll kill as many. Would you sacrifice yourself to save the Chinese nation? Nope. Because I really, uh, I'm a little bit too selfish for that. Would you guys sacrifice yourself to um would you guys sacrifice yourself to save the Chinese nation? Because I fucking wouldn't. Don't you think that's bad? No. I think what's bad is me dying. Well, like I think well, yeah, it'd be horrible if they fucking die. Like the whole Chinese nation just, they all die because I care about sentient beings. But like come on, I'm not gonna like get fucked because of it. I guess that's just why I'm not like a utilitarian or whatever. Even though humans kill multiple other beings and the earth is overpopulated, so I don't know. Mm. Imagine if the Chinese nation were a billion ethies. Probably even then. Eh, I would be really empathetic to them because, like, obviously, empathy is like the ability to put yourself in their shoes. If they look exactly like me, and I would be feeling fucking terrible because I'd be like, oh shit. But I would only do it if it's necessary to like defend myself. Obviously. I'd probably put them before the average human if they looked exactly like me. Because I'd be like, oh, hell no, I'm not harming that thing. Because it would like fuck up my sense of like not being harmed. But you're going to die, so why do you want to defend yourself so much? Well, with how shit's coming, I'm not exactly sure that I'll actually have to die, depending on how technology advances. Imagine you nuke the Chinese nation when you die the next morning. What a waste. Well, yeah, but that could be said about really any self defense situation. Like, do you think it's immoral to kill someone in self defense? Like, you could just die the next morning, so why are you, like, killing someone? Like, yeah, it's a possibility, but, I'm not gonna fucking take the risk of not dying the next morning, or I'm not gonna, like, cut my life short. Eyes can't join for some reason. Hmm. Pineapple said, nuke me for free, please. Okay. Surveillance intensifies. The CIA. Why the fuck are you in here? Because of my vegan gains debates. He's coming after me, y'all. I'm actually gonna debate vegan gains again, and I'm finally gonna cuck him. I don't think it's okay to kill in self-defense because there are ways to defend yourself without killing. I like your technology idea. It makes sense why you feel that way. Well, well, that's the whole point of saying killing in self-defense. Like when I say killing in self-defense, I don't mean like someone trying to punch me and me just blowing their brains out. I mean like shooting someone because I'm actually fearing for my life, and there's actually a high probability if I don't shoot him that I will die or I'll be seriously harmed. Like, yeah. Um, so that's what I mean by killing self-defense. I don't mean just like jump the gun and fucking kill someone. And anyone who would do that, I think they're immoral. But I don't know what the question is, but the answer is definitely aliens. Killing in self-defense can be related to people trying to steal my stash of nooch. Nooch. Yep. Pretty sure that would fall under property rights. Something. You have the right to like defend your property in some states and shit. Or some countries. No, I think property right is something else. Yeah, whatever. Whatever. Oh, shit. Where the fuck my pop-out chat go? Oh, okay. Holy shit. My wife asked why I had my gun out. I said Decepticons. She said Decepticons? I said yeah, Decepticons. She laughed. I laughed. The toaster laughed. I shot the toaster. Fun times. The fuck? Do you mean Decepticons? Like, and I've heard something like that before. But yeah, 1 second, sorry, I got fucking um fucked up. Okay. Um I might be able to get Curvy Vegan in here. Hold up. Let me just copy that link. I'll post it in my Discord. I'll send it to Eyes on Discord. Hold up. Another reason why. What's Curvy Vegan's age? I don't know. I'm not a fan of killing due to property rights. Well, it really depends. Because I would consider a lot of things property, and if someone tried to fuck with something that like I liked, like, um someone tried to like steal your fucking wedding ring, or someone tried to like steal a fucking like something that has a lot of like you have a lot of memories with it or whatever, I think it might be fine. And it well that is to assume killing would be necessary, but I all right, cool, all right, cool, Curvy. um Another reason why abortion is okay. You are aborting a potential Hitler. Imagine if Hitler was aborted, what a beautiful thing that would have been. Well, look, and I talked about this with Magnus because he brought up that he could. I said the exact same thing. He said, fucking. He said that, like, well, you're aborting potentially someone who could cure cancer. And I said, yeah, and you're also aborting potential Hitler. And it's like, yeah, it could go either way. So that's what I would say to you. It's like, yeah, they could be the next Hitler, but they could also cure cancer. I don't think that's a particularly strong argument. Talking about veganism, is mayonnaise an instrument? If it's vegan mayonnaise, yeah, veganase. Oh shit, I totally fucking forgot. Sorry, eyes. Um, okay, sent it to you. How do you record your vocals for your songs? On my mic? Um, um, yeah, I have a blue snowball and I record my shit, and then my friend Mizuki99 helps me mix it. And yeah. Um, strike two. Oh, what's up, bro?
Hey.
Can everyone hear eyes fine? We finna have Curvy Vegan in here. Eyes. Uh,
Oh, cool.
alright, cool. Can't hear this, damn. Well, it must be on your end because everyone else can hear it. Sorry, Eco. Well, she can't hear me, so like. Well, unless she's talking about eyes or something. Can hear you now. Okay, cool. Let me post this on my Discord or something. Fucking. Sorry you feel congested, Pineapple. Do you need some vegan medicine? Peace and love. Thanks. The brain inside head. Peace and love indeed. Bruh, I can't wait to debate vegan gains again. I'm so much better at debating. Well, if he like agrees to debate, but because the last time I was at a very, very fucking big disadvantage because I was smoking a lot of weed at the time. And like, you know how weed affects like the adolescent brain and shit. And even then, I tripped him up on some shit. Thanks for streaming. It is appreciated. Thank you for existing to everyone here. Give me mod status or I will kill myself and it will be your fault. You're already a mod. Fucking Jacob. Yeah, it was completely my fault. I wasn't high like during the debate, but I had fucking brain fog. I know that for a fact. But like watch my abortion debate and then watch my vegan gains debate. I'm so much better at debating now. Went into the past and threatened you. Oh, all right. All these mod almost like vegan gains' channel. Yeah. Oh, what's up, Magnus? Thoughts on vertical farming? I'm not exactly read up on vertical farming. Isn't that just like very sustainable farming? Cut costs, maximize yields with vertical farming systems and containers, scale your organic superfood products. Um, oh, so yeah, it's like producing a bunch of shit for like, you know, lower resources. That's nice. I am good at debating except for the fact that after a bit of talking, my anxiety gets up and I stutter and can't talk and shake. Yeah. I've been debating in the last couple of days, really interesting field of agriculture. Yeah, seems pretty cool. I'm gonna make a video responding to a Ben Shapiro video pretty soon, but which will be interesting. I think you guys will like it. Maybe even after this live stream, I'll like continue writing it. Y'all are talking about fucking Supernatural. I've never watched that show. Libtard. Republic KKK. Or Demic KKK. Rat. I don't fucking know. Yeah, I've heard about Supernatural. I just don't fucking watch it. I don't really watch many TV shows. Like the only TV shows I watch oh, what's up, London? The only TV shows I watch is like American Horror Story, The Walking Dead. I watched this horrible TV show called Black Summer on Netflix. It's so fucking bad. It's a zombie show and it's completely fucked. It's stupid as hell. The acting is bad. The fucking story is bad. The dialogue is bad. There were some good parts, but I'll repost the link, Curvey. HS was good except for the clown season. I couldn't watch it. I liked the first few episodes of the clown season, but I fucking hated Apocalypse, really. Like a lot of the episodes was complete shit. It was structured completely horrible. They should have showed more shit in the actual Apocalypse. That was completely fucked that they didn't. It should have been kind of like Walking Dead, how they just show people surviving. They should have just showed that. Like that would be so interesting just to see someone like surviving in the nuclear apocalypse. But no, they have to show boring fucking shit and make it like Cult season 2. Walking Dead got lame, yeah, whatever. I still like it. London asked something, but you retracted it. Oh, what's up, Magnus? Oh, what's up, Curvey?
That's so
Oh, what's up, Magnus?
weird.
Salutations.
Hey, can
Oh, what's up,
you
Curvey?
guys see me or not? It's saying Hangouts cannot use the selected camera without the working camera. Weird.
There's an echo on someone's end.
Hey, can you guys see me or not? It's saying Hangouts cannot use the selected
Yeah, we can't see you. We see your profile image.
There's an echo on someone's end.
It's my end. Hang on.
Where are the turtles?
What the fuck is going on?
It's
What the fuck? Apparently, someone is searching for turtles.
Yeah, it's on
hang on, hang
Curvey's
on,
then.
hang on.
Yeah, it's probably a good idea. What's up, Effie?
Not much.
Kids.
What's up, Jacob?
What Ben Shapiro video are you responding to?
The video that says Ben Shapiro destroys the abortion argument.
Oh yeah, so like 50 different videos there.
Well, he only shows one video in it, and it's fucking funny. But
A lot of familiar voices right now.
Are you gonna do the old retard stabs you in the dick hypothetical?
yeah, I'll probably do something like that. I'll explain like
It's just taken way out of context for me, so it's like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Have you watched the debate between me and Effie?
Who, me?
Yeah.
No, I haven't watched any of your debates, even Effie's Gaines one. I haven't watched all Vegan Gaines debates because some of them are good, but some of them aren't. I don't know. It's hard to tell, you know. Like, I recently watched the one where it was Idub's girlfriend. That one was really good. Like, he
yeah.
best almost ever. Like, he's super confident and had great debate ethic. But some of them are shit. Like fucking Onision's. It's like, even the quality's shit. It's like,
Well, why would you watch something with Onision in it? That's my question.
Yeah, for real.
Onision's just shit. Like everything he touches.
Yeah, let's not get into that shit. Like, we all agree on it. Like, we'll just be like, it's like being a.
Yeah, let's have a circle jerk. This is the hate Onision stream now. Change the title, Effie. No longer a chill chat.
The most satisfying debate to watch is probably the Shadow Starshine debate because it's like the only debate so far that I think Vegan Gaines has lost. And it's like,
oh boy, wait until I'm debating him.
well, like, and it's kind of like weird because it's like, yeah, I like the guy, obviously. I'm a mod on his channel, but it's like, I think everyone deserves to get their ass beat at least once. Like, come on.
Well, it's a good learning experience. Like, if you lose a debate, like, in my opinion, I have a different definition of losing a debate. Like, for example, if we have a debate on whether fucking murder is wrong or something, like, I'm just using an obvious example, and we come to the conclusion that, like, and the person that's arguing for murder being okay and everyone should be able to kill each other wins, then everyone's lost because, you know, the world as a whole has gotten a little worse. But I think everyone wins if, you know, we come to the better conclusion. But, you know, if you go by the typical definition of fucking winning the debate or whatever, then I don't know, that it doesn't really matter to me. Like, as long as everyone's, like, kind of moving towards a better conclusion, then we're all winners here.
I think it's mostly about like debating for truth rather to win, because like I'm pretty sure debating just to win is like the definition of like a classic sophist. You just debate to win rather than to like gain truth, or you just make up a bunch of shit.
Usually I agree, but sometimes it's worth it. Like, have you seen the Destiny versus No Bullshit debate? Or
yeah,
like, it's like he's arguing for incest just to prove how retarded fucking No Bullshit is. And like, well, actually, he wasn't I guess you could say he's arguing for I don't know, but I think that's a good example where like what he's arguing for isn't like, you know, the good thing. It's more just exposing No Bullshit for being a retard so that less people listen to him.
Yeah. No Bullshit is a fucking retard.
Yeah,
I'm gonna I need to get good at debating like religion and stuff because I wanna fucking debate like Primal Edge Health or something.
The great thing
about boy, theology.
Evidence to prove it wrong.
Wait, what was that?
The great thing about debating religion is that it doesn't take much evidence to prove it wrong because the burden of proof is on them. Like,
yeah,
they need to provide.
Well, it depends on what they're claiming, does it not?
Sorry?
It depends on what they're claiming.
Usually, yeah, but like, for one, they need like pretty much any argument that they're making, like it's the only decent arguments that I've heard for religion is like, oh well, you can't prove it doesn't exist. It's like, yeah, but that's all you can say. Like I can say that with literally everything. I don't know. Do you get what I'm saying though? Like,
Yeah, like that's like saying like provide evidence that unicorns don't exist. It's like, well, I can't, but
exactly. That's my
Well,
point.
I'd be proving a negative.
well, yeah, exactly. You
That's
can't
my
really do that.
And there's like a good example is there's a difference between say debating nutrition versus debating just like
Yeah.
like that.
Oh, that's definitely true. I think it's like kind of hard. Like on the Ask Yourself server on my alternate account, I was like, they were talking about Shadow Starshine, and I was like, well, he whooped Vegan Gains. And then Ask Yourself was like, where did Vegan Gains make a contradiction? And it's like when neither of them made a contradiction, and it's not even all about that for me. It's more about like performance and, you know, like sportsmanship and like shit like that. Like,
I've heard a lot of talk about Ask Yourself's Discord recently. Like, I don't know. Like, what's that all about? It just seems like.
Because it's fucking toxic, that's why.
Sorry?
It's totally toxic. It's like the most toxic Discord server, like, out of any Discord. Can you hear me?
If it has anything to do
mhm.
with Isaac's personality, like, I could really see that. Because, see, I like Isaac, but, and actually, fun fact, I met him in person. It's irrelevant, though.
That's so cool. No, just kidding.
Oh yeah, he's smart and he's logical. I think we can all agree in that. In general. But he has fucking terrible debate etiquette. Like I'm sure some of you guys have seen Foot Soldier's debate with him, right? Like
Yeah.
both in the wrong at like to an extent, but like Isaac needs to like actually help the other person articulate themselves or etc. rather than just being a fucking autistic logic computer god, like, and trying not to make any sense. You know what I mean? Like, he's like,
Yeah.
oh, I have to put it in this fucking calculation in order for it to work. Like,
He always asks, it seems like he just learned propositional logic and now he's like flexing and he's like, whoa, P1, P2, fucking
yeah,
conjunction, everything.
sounds like that, but like, I just think like all he cares about is being consistent and like he doesn't give a shit if you understand it or that he's actually doing good with it. Like he just wants to be as logical as possible. That's what
Isaac's funny when he tries to lay it all out, like explain the logic, and he talks really fast too when he has a short amount of time. It's like, what the fuck is he talking about?
But I don't even think it's about Isaac per se. I think it's just the vibe of the server is just super toxic. Like it's just not the kind of place where you feel comfortable hanging out and you can like say what you want, and
Yeah.
it's just turned into like, because I joined probably like it was like end of 2017 or something like that. And it was so different, like now it just seems a little bit, I don't know, it just seems strange. It's really weird. I don't know. It's not about Isaac per se. It's more just about the whole vibe of the forum.
I gave a comment on one of Isaac's videos. It was I don't know. It was a recent video, and I thought it was good, right? Like, for the past while, Isaac has been making videos like that are an hour and a half long, or fucking etc. Like 4 hours, ridiculous. And
Yeah.
like, I hate those videos because it's nobody watches it, like, and it's not productive at all, right? Like,
Yeah.
I don't deny, like, defend yourself if someone's making a video on you or whatever, but like,
Absolutely.
so I gave a comment on his video, and it was actually nice. Like, it was I think the comment was something around the lines of like, hey, I'm glad like you can get into the like really good videos now instead of having to constantly defend name the trait from like retards all the time, something like that, right? And then
Yeah.
he replied to me saying, like, if you don't like my content, get the fuck out. And then
Oh my god!
replied to him. I was like, I must have said something like, dude, it was constructive criticism. Like,
Wait, what did you comment again?
it was something along the. I have a picture of it. I can. I don't know. If you follow me on Twitter, you could look through. But it was something along the lines of like I'm glad you're getting into like the good videos of something, and then instead of like having to constantly defend yourself from people attacking name the trade and shit like that, right? It was a good thing. I was like saying, hey, I'm glad you're making these good videos that I like now, right?
Yeah, I think the constant defense of name the trade is kind of evidence that it's a really flawed argument.
Mm-hmm.
It's in its current form.
Okay, yeah, well, regardless of whether it's flawed, like, that's not the point. My point was that he cannot take criticism, even if it's completely just, like, constructive. Like, I literally basically just said that it was a fucking good video, and I want more of these videos, and he's like, if you don't like my content, get the fuck out. And I was like, okay, you don't like my comment, you can get the fuck out. That's what I basically replied back. And then he's like, okay, blocked, goodbye. And he fucking blocked me from commenting on his channel ever.
And that's what I mean. Like, it just gets a little bit over the top, you know, like it just gets,
yeah,
you know, like I have a lot of respect for Isaac. I think he's really good. You know, I think, you know, he's a smart person and that sort of thing. But yeah, there's something, I have been like booted. Like, they actually made a meme out of me joining and just like banning me within like 2 or 3 minutes. And it's like, this actually isn't funny. This is like super immature. This is not cool. This isn't, you know, like, for me, that's not like a funny thing. For me, that's like, okay.
I didn't. Sorry, what did you say that he was doing for something minutes?
So I joined the Discord, and it wasn't him; it was the mod. You know, like,
I bet it was
joined.
Falcon.
No, it wasn't. And but because he, like, obviously the whole point of having mods is so they, you know, can do the work for him, because he wouldn't be able to manage that many people in the forum. But like, you know, I joined, and then they just like ban me within like 2 minutes just for shits and gigs. And it's like, you know, like, that's not even fucking funny. You know, like, that's just ridiculous. And then, like, you know, seeing other people just banned for the most minute kind of, you know.
Wait, I'm sorry. Sorry. You said they banned you or something for 2 minutes?
Oh yeah, I get banned all the time, and like I've been banned like multiple times to the point now where it's just like, you know, it's not actually even worth my time. It's not, you know, one of those kind of places where I want to hang out, and that's like why I really enjoy, you know, vegan games like Richard's live streams, because people are welcome. Like, you can have differing opinions, you can, you know, say what you want, as long as it's not too fucking extreme, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Like, do you know what I mean? It's just more inclusive. It's not, there's, like, I like to think that us as mods, we're not bullying people. Like, we don't bully people. People can say what they want, you know, like that sort of thing.
The atmosphere around Vegan Gains' channel and the comments in general is like, any opinion is fucking welcome, unless you're just
exactly,
or you know, just retarded shit. Like, you don't even want a discussion. Like, you're just stating retarded bullshit. Like, oh, the Holocaust didn't happen. Like,
exactly,
discussion about it. Like, you're just saying shit.
Like, it's actually going to be like super offensive, you know, for people to get pissed off and to kind of,
like,
you know.
If I were to say anything and I was just spamming and didn't want a discussion, like, you'd probably ban me, rightfully so. Anything to do with offense, right?
What did I miss today anyway on Richard's live stream?
I was like asleep through a lot of it. Then I woke up and ended it.
Richard's.
Oh. I had like a family emergency I had to tend to, unfortunately. Fucking hell, my camera is not working on this for some reason. I think I might try and change devices. Are you guys not having your cameras on purpose?
I have my camera on, but I've got it blocked because I'm fucking half naked.
I'll turn my camera on though.
Ooh, hot.
Yeah, that's no fun. That's no fun, Magnus.
Do you have your camera on?
Well, I've just gotten out of a suit because I've been at university all day.
You wear a suit to university?
Yeah.
Are you kidding? Why?
I'm at a law school. It's part
I
of the job description.
I work for the law school at my uni. I'm a sessional academic for the School of Law. And I don't even fucking get dressed up in a suit. But I do see other tutors. Other tutors are like dressed up in high heels and skirts and what have you. And it's like, oh my God, I literally cannot be fucked doing that. But I work for the Faculty of Law for the School of Justice. So justice is a bit different to the Faculty of Law. You know what I mean? So I can see why you get dressed up like that. Whereas us justice tutors, like one of the tutors I work with, she's so cool. She's got like a shaved head, wears like Doc Martens, is like everyone's like SJW kind of, you know. But yeah, God, if I had to wear a suit to work, that would fucking kill me, for real.
Honestly, I don't mind it. I actually quite like my suits because I've got them tailored. So they're actually comfy. I think that's the problem most people have with suits. They just buy shit Walmart trash. I mean, it just breaks on them.
What's wrong with what? Man, I wish I had Walmart over here in Australia. Fuck, that'd be dope.
Oh, you're in Australia as well?
Yeah.
What state?
Queensland. I don't want to dox myself too much. I don't want people like calling my uni going, you've got a sessional academic working there who has very like right-wing views, like fucking Bart K or someone.
Oh, yeah.
Oh gosh, yes. Sorry. So yeah, what did I miss today on Richard's live stream? Anything too much? Any saucy conversations that were going on?
It was just a gaming live stream, nothing really.
Mortal Kombat again.
As Days Gone, it's like Red Dead Redemption, but with zombies.
At all, but whatever he plays, like I don't even pay attention. Like he could be playing, he could literally just watch hentai child porn, and I wouldn't notice for like a little.
Oh, damn, dude! Don't say that on fucking the internet, bruh.
It's called the
Well, this
lolly
video's
porn.
demonetized now. Congratulations.
Yeah, he was making a fucking shit ton of money before.
Exactly.
Oh,
Effie was raking in that PewDiePie money, and then he screwed it all up.
Oh well, we already talked about
what you already talked about?
nuking China, like nuking China in self-defense.
Why?
Oh yeah, but YouTube can't make any money in China. It's blocked over there, so they don't care.
Oh, all right.
That's fine.
Oh
No,
yeah, that's true. They block
Chinese
everything
aren't real
in
people.
China.
Well, Curvy, we were talking about like this. I can't remember who it was, but someone was like utilitarianism, and I was like, no, I'm not really a utilitarian. Like, because if someone thinks like actions are moral based on like whether or not they contribute to like the overall happiness or overall well-being.
Yeah, well, utilitarianism is basically consequentialism. So yeah, exactly.
So like if China was trying to like kill me and I had to like nuke China to defend myself, I would nuke China. And but that would be totally horrible for the overall net well-being.
Yeah, but I think you are a bit of a consequentialist because like you kind of condone vivisection sometimes.
Well, I would consider myself a deontologist with like
God.
Oh
Yeah, I remember you brought this up in our abortion debate.
Oh,
why are you a deontologist?
What's wrong with being a deontologist?
It's just the inferior
Here we go.
system to utilitarianism. The Chad normative system, the superior to all other normative systems, is rule-based utilitarianism. It's the best of both worlds.
Wait, so what do you mean utilitarianism?
Sorry, what was that?
I think I know what you mean, but just to be clear, what do you mean by rule-based utilitarianism?
Well, rule-based utilitarianism, rather than looking at a specific act and looking at the consequences of that, looks at a broad action, i.e. something akin to killing, and makes a general rule against it. So, for example, we are to say that if we look generally over a long period of time, we see that the average result of killing, for example, in the context of blood feuds, produces a net negative result. So we are going to ban blood feuds because we can see and we can create a rule against it.
It kind of sounds like what I thought it was. So, and then like, you know, you can make broad rules, and then if there's like a specific situation that you want to exclude from that, then you make a rule for that, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, you can have very specific rules and very broad rules.
Yeah,
I think
so,
having,
like,
you know, I think there's a balance to be had, because if you just get specific rules, you end up just with act utilitarianism.
yeah, I agree. Like, if you had like infinite amount of rules, like you would just eventually get to perfect utilitarianism. But you can't like just have
Yeah,
one.
but I don't think that's practical.
Exactly. You can't have just one rule like, oh, increase net well-being as much as possible, because then it's so up for interpretation and everyone needs to constantly debate this shit. You know, like
Yeah.
you need rules in place. I actually thought of this on my own when I was like,
Fuck.
nice team. Anyways, I thought of this when I was like 16 or 17 or something. I find like I come up with a lot of these like ethical views and think that they're original until I find out like, oh, this already exists. Like you.
Well, that's life in general.
Yeah.
Turns out, you know, you had 10,000 years of written human history before you.
Yeah, like it kind of sucks though, because like you think you invent something and then like, oh, it already exists. Like I came up with like the concept for higher dimensions and shit in my head, and then like, oh, people already like fucking discuss the existence of higher dimensions. Like,
Well,
it's
what's
a good
weird?
like you're on the right track when you're studying something, because it I don't know, shows that you, I guess, are
Yeah.
the right way. But I don't know. It's
Well-
like I wish I was the first to come up with this, because I'm a petty loser who just wants to be recognized for something.
Yeah,
What you
like
need to do is you just need to rebrand it and then market it as your own original invention. So it's not a fourth dimension; it's the Jacob dimension, and it's just like you just like disagree on like the most minor thing. I mean, it's just all flashy marketing.
You know, a good example of that? Name the trait, because that's actually not. It's just what it's called. Like no one called it name.
Well, it's just marginal case. Isaac has literally described it as just marginal cases.
Yeah,
With
but he's literally credited himself for like creating the name the trait argument when he hasn't really. He's just like
yeah, it's basically just marginal cases, just like applied to more things, basically, and like, it's just fucking.
It's great. I don't know why all of a sudden like there's a lot of vegans like denouncing name the trait. Like I can agree that it's not a good argument to use all the time, not because it's illogical, but just because not everyone wants to debate the fucking meta ethics and shit, because it won't work, right? Like sometimes you use appeal to emotion and shit, but I still see as illogical.
Well, I think the issue with it is that, and the issue that Shadow Star Shine and Perspective Philosophy brought up quite nicely, and Foot Soldier less so, was that if we are to look at name the trait as it is formally written, if it allows you to name the history of an object as the trait, we have to equalize that, because
Fucking
trait
Apple
evaluation is a big part.
Okay, let him know.
We essentially, if name the trait allows that, which it does, it means that you either break the law of identity or the conclusion does not follow, because you equalize the object, in which case moral value is retained, because you know the value is 0 because you're comparing nothing against an animal, and the planet is going to say the animal has 0 moral value, and they're going to say that nothing has moral value. So moral value has been retained despite the equalization process. Or you say,
okay, copy for a sec.
That.
So, I'm a little bit of an uneducated person on, formal ethical. What's the word I'm looking for? This is literally fucking ironic right now. I'm a little bit illiterate on, formal logic, philosophy, terms and stuff like that. So I can understand logic and shit like that, but I'm not okay with the terms.
Sure. So I can try and simplify it.
Okay?
Oh
Sure.
my
So
God.
I'll try and put it into physical terms. let's say we have a pear and an apple
Okay.
on a table. Then let's say there was never an apple. There was always just 2 pears. So just get rid of that apple. Like, it's not even in your memory out anymore.
Wait, hold on.
But then why did you say there was a pear and an apple?
Because that's what name the trait does. Because in the criticism of it, I'm saying I'm naming the trait of the object, the history of the object. And then you equalize that history. So it's not just, we're saying there's a new object. We're saying we're going back through the time stream and literally erasing the existence of that previous object. So in that example I've given, you had an apple, you had a pear, and then we named the history as the trait, we equalized it, and we always just had 2 pears.
But if 2 things have the exact same history, then they're the exact same thing, so it's not 2 different things to begin with.
Exactly, and then it is fair to say that more value has been retained for the same object.
Yeah.
Either that, or you are. So either the conclusion does not follow, or you say they're different somehow, in which case you break the law of identity.
I still don't see a contradiction, because what you're saying is like, oh well, say I don't know.
It's only a contradiction if you break the law of identity. The issue is the conclusion does not follow. The second part of the premise.
Yeah, but the thing is, in reality, there's literally no 2 things that are the exact same thing. There's only one thing that is the exact same thing, because that is the only thing that can have every single one of the traits that it has, which is what basically the history of it is. Because does that make sense? Like, you can't saying, well, the difference between black people and black people is the history of their, like, every trait. Like, that's saying the entire...
Well, I'm not naming every trait. I'm literally just saying the history of an object. And we could say that... And any trait is allowed to be named and name the trait, as far as my knowledge is. So you would be allowed to name the history.
In order to have the exact same history, it'd have to be in the exact same location, be in the exact same state. So they would be...
Exactly. They would be the same thing. That's exactly the point.
Wait, hold on. Bryn, there's a echo on your end, I think.
So how many people have we got here now? Is Bryn here as well, is he?
Yeah. I want to welcome Bryn from the AY Discord.
No, I think Bryn's actually, I think you're one of the people that fucking kicked me off, so go fuck yourself, cunt.
I'm not aware of me in any way being responsible for you being kicked out. In fact, I don't think you're even kicked out. I think you can come back whenever you want.
It's not that I give a shit, but I do respect your views on things. At least you actually have some kind of level of understanding in terms of,
anyways, I came on here because Magnus has no fucking clue what he's talking about.
Right, in terms of what you
So what Magnus is doing as a straw man is claiming that NTT makes any statement about metaphysical characteristics about the hypothetical rather than just characteristics about the components of the hypothetical. So when he says something, when he says,
okay, stop talking over each other, Jesus Christ.
So no, because hang on. He said I strawmanned him, and then the first thing he does is say I made claims about metaphysics. So I want to hear the exact quote.
No, you make claims about metaphysics of the hypothetical rather than about the components in the hypothetical.
Are we like literally going to talk about this right now? Fuck, man. Okay, sorry. Should I be like? Should I take the time? Should I like do a timing thing where we talk about the meta ethics of? Are we talking about utilitarianism still?
No, we're talking about how the law of identity breaking objection to name the trait is completely incoherent and requires a straw man of the principle that's being expressed in the argument.
All right, go, Bryn.
Well, I didn't say it breaks the law of identity exclusively. I said it's either you break the law of identity or the conclusion does not follow. So that would be a straw man on my position to say, but I'm saying it breaks the law of identity. There's a couple of pathways you could go down.
Bryn just left for some reason.
Probably because he got pissed off. Oh, here he comes.
Can you explain the law of identity to me clearly?
So all the law of identity states is that given some object A, the identity relation is going to be reflexive, which just means that it holds for itself. The idea here is that what the identity relation is expressing is that given the set of propositions true of the object, that all propositions of the thing it's being related to are also true in the same sense. So what we mean is, like, if I had object A and, it was true that the object is red and it's true that the object has 4 legs, then it's going to be true that the same object, which only has the propositions that it's red and that it has 4 legs, is identical. Now, the question then is, in what way does name the trait break the law of identity? And there's this suggestion that what it breaks is not what they say is a subcase of the law of identity, but what is not actually a subcase of the law of identity, but is instead a consequence of the law of identity and set theory's axiom of choice, which is that given a set of all propositions, you can't have 2 objects that are distinct, and that's fine. I'm okay with affirming Leibniz's law or the identity of indiscernibles. But what isn't clear to me is in what way name the trait actually requires you to affirm the law of identity or requires you to affirm Leibniz's law, and if I had to do either of those, how it would break them.
Okay, so
you're agreeing with me then that the conclusion does not follow because because it's a modus ponens, and so in every way it follows. It's a totally valid formula. I don't understand why that would be the objection. I explained earlier why it happened, because if we are to say that if we are to have 2 objects, we have to have an apple and a pear, and then we have to say the history is the trait that we are equalizing. So we never had an apple, we had a pear. It is fair to say, but if we have
this is what I meant when I said Magnus is making a metaphysical claim about the hypothetical itself and not about what's true in the hypothetical. So what he's doing, right, is we're taking a set of propositions and we're creating a hypothetical concerning them. And then what he's saying is this completely asinine objection, which is, but what if I was talking about a different set of propositions? Well, that's not interesting, because now he's adding, because you're adding extra propositions onto a secondary hypothetical. So you're no longer talking about our hypothetical. You're adding a proposition. You're adding a proposition that wasn't in the possible world we were talking about.
Do you reject history as a possible nameable trait?
Correct. That's not what we're talking about.
Why?
Because it's not a metaphysically it's not a metaphysically possible trait within the hypothetical.
Okay, so may I?
Hang on. So you're saying
people have such a difficult time getting their head around hypotheticals, because if these with hypotheticals,
I'm just interested in this because this will be, this is interesting. Is this a position of ask yourself as well? Because I don't watch much of this content.
It might very well be a position of ask yourself, but I don't think that matters.
Can you define?
So you're not going to make any claim about that, but this is your position, all right?
This is my position.
As far as I'm aware, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, ask yourself is pretty much fine with you naming anything as a trait, right?
Correct. Anything that is metaphysically possible within the hypothetical.
Can you define metaphysically?
Right. So the idea, right, is we're talking about possible worlds and the possible propositions within them. And so when we're talking about like some animal and the set of propositions that are true of them, the hypothetical hasn't even entered our notion yet. We're just taking all the things true of that animal. And then when we define a hypothetical, we're defining a possible world where we have all of the propositions that were true in our current analysis. And that's what we're constricting it around. Now, what Magnus's objection is, right, is to say that, look, what I actually want to run a consistency test on is a secondary possible world where we're analyzing the fact that there is this first primary possible world that included a subset of propositions. And that's fine. You can do a second name the trait, and you could say, look, the trait is actually that someone ran name the trait on this set of propositions. But that's not what we're doing in the hypothetical construction in the first place.
Hang on. What are you on about when you are talking about a set of propositions? You tell me to name the trait, and I say the trait is the history of the object. That is the first thing I say.
Right. That's fine. You can say something like that if.
Okay, so you agree that is fine. All right.
Yeah, that's fine.
Where do you go from there? So that you agree that's completely fine. So earlier you were saying you object to naming that as a trait, but now you're saying it's.
I object to naming the trait as the history that it has undergone this hypothetical. That's nonsensical.
So
it
makes perfect sense, because what you're going to do next, right, is you are going to say that trait equalization occurs, right?
Yeah, trait equalization is just a function.
So trait equalization occurs. We have object A and we have object B, and we're going to equalize the history, right? Because that's what trait equalization is. We're going to equalize the trait.
We're going to equalize the history that was included in the possible world before we constructed the hypothetical.
Where does that come into it?
What do you mean, where did that come into it? That's all it means to construct a hypothetical, is to take the set of propositions of the actual world or the analyzable world.
So you agree we can name the history, all right? We can name the history as a trait. So you've agreed to that, right? And then we've agreed to the fact we're going to do a trait equalization. What do you think is the conclusion of that?
Sorry, can you repeat? There's a lot of other people that are just like speaking up and they overtalk you. It's hard to understand you sometimes.
Sure. So you have the trait, which is the history of the object. You've agreed to as a trait.
Sure.
Then you've agreed, but we're going to perform trait equalization. So we have object A and object B, and we are going to equalize the trait between them. What is the conclusion?
What do you mean? What's the conclusion? It's just that the set of propositions are identical.
All right. So then the conclusion does not follow that moral value cannot be retained, because we have two objects, the same moral value, that have gone through trait equalization.
Yeah, that's all it means to equalize the traits. Just at some point, you're going to have the moral. If what you're saying, right, is that there's nothing that moral value is grounded upon, at the end, it's necessarily going to have to be the case that it's at the end. Necessarily, it's going to have to be the case that all you're doing. Look. I'm speaking still.
Okay, go.
Because the conclusion does follow. The idea is just that all you would have to do, if you're going to say that at this point the animal no longer has moral value, is to then assert that it has the proposition having moral value from the trait equalization process. But at no point did we remove moral value due to the fact that its grounding property was removed. Because it doesn't have a grounding property is what you would have to say. And if that's the case, then you are in direct contradiction.
Can you define grounding
I
property?
have no idea what you're on about.
What a grounding property is that given some grounding property A, it's going to be constantly conjunctive with B, which is just to say that in any case that we have A, B happens and B is explained by A.
If you just give me a
if moral value is grounded in something, then what it means is that moral value is not only necessarily entailed in all possible worlds by A, but that it is also explained by A. It's a stricter form of causation or material implication.
Okay, so that's a word salad. There's nothing to do with what I'm talking about.
What do you mean there's nothing? No, that's exactly what we're talking about when we're talking about name the trait, and someone asked me about it.
To do with what I'm talking about. I don't know why you've gone on to about grounding and such, because I think there is. If you allow me to get off the version and the trait, I can explain my criticism a lot more clearer. Because you've gone off on this weird tangent where you think I don't think there is moral value to begin with. I'm saying
I never said that.
Well, yes, you did. You said earlier that I would have to have this. I would have to say there's no moral value to begin with. That's the only way it would make sense.
That's not what I said. I said that there's no grounding property for moral value is what you would have to say if at no point during the trait equalization process did moral value get lost. You would have to at that point say that moral value is groundless. That it just occurs as a brute fact of the world.
As a brute fact of the world, what does that mean?
It means that there's nothing that causes moral value. There's no explanation for it, no antecedent.
And I haven't stated that at all, have I? I think there are.
Well,
things
that would be the only thing you could say if it were the case that you went through. If you went through the trade equalization process, and at no point during the trade equalization process did the animal gain moral value or did the human lose moral value, then the necessary conclusion of that is that moral value isn't grounded in anything.
You completely missed the point. So we have a human being and we have an animal, and the animal has no moral value, and the human has moral value.
Right.
And then we get rid of the human, and the moral value is retained because we have nothing.
Look, can I just interject for a second? You scream, and the problem is when you scream, your mic peaks out, and so it's really hard to understand you sometimes. If you could just like try lowering your voice just a little bit, or get a better mic,
Yeah, weird.
that would be great. Because I'm losing like every third word, and so it's very hard to understand what you're saying sometimes.
Yeah, let's take a deep breath here.
So sure. So we have a human being who has moral value. We have an animal that does not. And then we name the trait, which is the history of the object, which is human being. You agree that is a trait we can name, then we go through with equalization. Right?
Sure.
Equalize it, and the value is 0, and then the value of the animal is 0, moral value has been retained.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, again, you keep cutting out like every third word. It's really hard to understand you.
I can hear fine on my end. Is that maybe from your end, Bryn?
Yeah, it might be. Maybe it's my end. I mean, look, can you just one more time? Can you just try and like simply explain why it is the case that like this notion of history is important? Because I think what you're doing, right, is you're just going to be equivocating on history. If what you're saying is that the history is then going to include the equalization process, because if that's the sort of objection you'd like to lay out, then I'm just going to give you the possible world's explanation of what we mean by the trade equalization function, which I've shown to Shadow and he has no response for, as far as I'm aware.
All right. So let us being the human being has moral value. We have an animal. Animal has no moral value. We name the trait. The trait is history. You allow that trait. Agree?
Sure. History's fine.
Right. Yeah. History is fine. So we say the history of the object is now gone because we've gone through trait equalization and we've equalized the history of the object. So the human and the moral value of that human, right? That never existed. And now we have nothing. And we have an animal.
Why does history and the moral value evaporate? I don't understand what you mean.
Because there was never a human to begin with.
Sure, there was a human to begin with. What are you talking about?
No, there wasn't. We've just erased him from the time stream. We've done some Doctor Who shit.
That's not true. So the trade equalization process. No, like the trade equalization process is from one set of propositions to another set of propositions. And hang on. Right. So
let me just say, right? You agree that history is a trait we can name, and you agree that we can trait equalize it.
Right. Look, the history of the object is going to be equalized, but the existence of the human being in history doesn't get removed. That's a completely different proposition.
That's
the fact that the human exists is still going to be a true fact of the world.
No, it's not. The human never existed.
Look, the accessible worlds are going to require that both of them exist in the first place. Otherwise, it wouldn't mean anything to be going through trade equalization.
Exactly. It means nothing. The conclusion does not follow because the human never existed.
What do you mean it doesn't follow? You haven't shown me that the human never existed.
What do you think happens when you remove a human being from temporal space?
But you haven't shown me that we've done that. You've just shown me that it's true that one of these sets now has. You named history of an object as the trait, but you didn't. That doesn't mean that you're changing a proposition that's true of like the nature of the universe. I don't see why that would follow. We're talking
what about? I'm just referring to the human being, but we've just erased from time, and you think that human being somehow still there.
Where did we erase the human being from time?
Because you just equalized a human being into a chicken. There was never a human being. There was always a chicken.
I don't see how that follows. Where did that happen?
By trait equalizing the history of the human with the history of the chicken.
Right. I don't see why it was the case that the proposition like this human exists is gone, though. That doesn't seem to make any sense.
Because there was never a human.
Sure there was.
Bryn. No, there wasn't, because we just equalized history. All right, Bryn,
calm down.
let me try and make this very clear. Imagine an apple, imagine a pear, all right? Now forget the apple. There was always just a pear. That's what happens when we have the equalization process of the history. That's the issue. That's why the conclusion doesn't follow. There was never a human, because he has been erased.
No.
Get the human out of your mind.
That's just like vehemently untrue. I can show you if we want to move away from this like weird notion of like.
How is it untrue? You agree? You agree about history as a nameable trait?
Look, you're yelling a lot, but like you haven't shown me how we're moving from whatever the fuck you're talking about to whatever conclusion you're talking about.
Let me turn my gain down. Might be too loud.
May I try to, be a little?
Right. So Bryn. All right. Here's what I think you're lacking in understanding. This is what frustrates me. Because you go on these weird tangents when it's really quite simple. All right. You have an object, and then we get in our TARDIS or our time machine and whatever, and that object never existed. That object.
Yeah, why are we doing that?
In memory.
Why are we doing that?
Like
where does that come?
What happens in equalization?
Why does that happen in equalization? Curvey, can you shut the fuck up?
Oh,
Like you're adding nothing to to this conversation, and you're making Magnus like nearly incomprehensible.
Bryn, I want to interject for one. Oh my god, did he just like literally?
No, I ejected him because you're not going to be fucking disrespectful.
I'm just like, I just want to know, were we talking, was this meant to be a criticism for Name the Trait? Like, I don't understand how this derailed into this full-blown fucking, marginal, hypothetical, fucking what have you. Like, how did this spiral into this?
Because I mentioned Name the Trait, and I said I didn't know why Name the Trait was...
But was it?
Yeah, I was explaining some of the criticisms. Bring Bryn back on.
He is back.
Yeah,
but
okay.
you need to be respectful, Bryn.
All I wanted to do.
Like how am I being disrespectful when she's sitting there like laughing at interlocutors that she's not even engaging with? Why is there like a peanut gallery?
This isn't a debate. This isn't a debate. Anyone can talk. This is not what even this fucking stream was supposed to be for. But and you guys,
yeah. Look. The only reason, like Ethy, the only reason I'm here, right, is because there's people that are coming and expressing just completely fallacious, completely strawmanning points of view on an argument with just like.
Bryn, we can. Right, so Bryn, first off, I never strawman Name the Trait.
Look, I can leave because it looks like this room has like no interest in having constructive discussion.
I'm interested.
Like Shadow and I will be Shadow and I will be discussing this view in the near future, anyways. But just to like leave with the issue of what's being objected to here is that the chief problems that they're trying to raise fall on two faulty assumptions. And the first assumption that's faulty is that they can name things that are true of the hypothetical given our reality and things that are true in the hypothetical. And so what they're objecting to is like the idea that like this trait equalizability or the fact that there's like a history are things that we could actually refer to within the hypothetical, but that's not possible because we're taking a set of accessible. No, you can name the vague notion of history. Totally fine.
How is it vague? It's not vague at all.
They can name look. You can name the accurate proposition of the animal has like a history as your trait. That's fine. You can say that. But the problem is what you're trying to do then is within the hypothetical, then name some referent that is outside of the hypothetical, which is that there's even a hypothetical occurring or that there's some trait equalization occurring, and that doesn't seem to follow. And then the other weird
Hang on. So I've got Name the Trait version up here.
Version 5?
Version 5. If your view affirms a given human is trait equalizable to a given non-human animal, it sounds like me, trait equalization is in the first premise. Correct?
Can we put that up on the screen somewhere so we can actually follow, or
Probably not. No.
like version 5?
Well, look, trait equalization is within like the first sentence of premise 1, and I don't know why Bryn was saying there that trait equalization doesn't occur, because it clearly does. Like, what are you trying to get at?
Trait equalization occurring is not one of the traits that you could name, because that would be just a thing. That's a thing that's true, that's occurring of the hypothetical, but it's not something that's occurring.
That's not the trait being named.
It's not something in the hypothetical. That's the objection that Shadow gives. Your other weird objection that you're giving now is a different one, because you're naming something that's completely separate from the propositions that are true of the sets of propositions in object A and object B.
What am I saying that is separate from the propositions? I'm naming the trait history. You agree that's fine?
Sure.
Okay, and then we go through the next step, which is the trait equalization. All right,
sure.
And you agree that that's fine. All right.
Sure.
So we've equalized the history of object A and object B.
Sure.
Right. So they were always the same object.
No, look, that's what's getting weird, right?
So that's the point of contention. So why do you think that is weird? Because that seems very intuitive, very logical, and very clear to me. And I don't know what your objection is.
Right, because the issue there is now you're trying to refer to this like vague notion of like what the identity or like what the reference is trying to talk about. And so if what we wanted to do was make this even more logical, we would be putting this in what's called possible world semantics. And so what we'd be looking at is trans world identifiers or meta identifiers. And when we name histories, what we'd be talking about is the histories that are true of the animal and the history that's true of the human. But that meta identifier isn't going to go away. One second. Do you have Discord open? I can show you what I mean by this graphic.
Sure, I have Discord open.
Yeah, can we like try
okay, 1 second.
so we all know what you're talking about at least?
So are you going like on a many Earths theory there, where you are saying?
Well, effectively something like that, right? So I'm just using. I'll take the trait equalization process.
Can I not just reject that is the case and go, there is one universe?
Well, no, because maybe now what you're doing is conflating what I mean, right? Because what I'm using is something called possible world semantics. Unless you're going to object to the concept of possible worlds, which I think would be a tall order. That's all I mean by trait equalization. So there's trans. No. It's a logical notion. 1 second. I'll DM you on Discord what I'm talking about, because there's a graphical interpretation of this, and then if we need to get into the nitty gritty of what it means for things to be conceivable and for things to be possible and for things to be counterfactual, we can do that. But
that's fine.
1 second, I'll just send you an image.
Can I check?
All right, so here's an image. I just sent it to you right now.
Bryn, can you put that on your screen somehow so we can see it?
So what I'm talking about here, right, is the fact that X and Y is what would be like our trans world identity or our meta identifier for the sets of propositions that we're talking about. And the reason why we can keep these things throughout the trait equalization process is by what's called like a closeness function. And so we're just looking for the closest set of propositions that have objecthood in the other possible worlds. And we're stepping through this closeness function from, world 1 all the way to, in this image, world 6. But at all points, we retain the meta identifier, because the meta identifier is just used for this hypothetical construction.
What do you mean by
it's just.
May I just ask what you mean by meta identifier? Is that just saying we are outside of the hypothetical?
Correct.
We have two hypothetical objects, and we have a meta tag to it, essentially.
Correct. Exactly. That's what we mean when we do hypothetical construction of this variety.
All right.
In modal logic.
All right. So there still is a meta identity to the human being, just not in the hypothetical. We can look from the outside of the hypothetical and say that there is nothing, but that would still lead to there the conclusion of name the trait not following.
Well, no. Look. The issue is name the trait is still going to follow. It's just you could conceivably say that the history of all events that are true of the animal is what causes the animal to not have moral value. That's fine to say. You could say, look, at no point was this object ever human Y, but it's still true that we have this meta identifier that allows us.
The whole point is retaining
allows
moral
it
value.
to
What I'm saying is that you can retain moral value while being trait equalizable because the value would be 0.
Right. That the problem with that is that that's going to be contradictory.
How is it contradictory?
Because it's going to be the case that, if we look at these set of propositions here in the graphic, right? So the set of propositions in X and the set of propositions in Y, at some point, you're going to reach the proposition that talks about moral value. And you're going to say, look, this thing now, we're swapping that proposition just through the trait equalization process, simply because we have to. Like, it's just we're going through.
Hang on. Why would I be saying anything about moral value? Why would I be saying moral value is contingent upon this? I don't think
that's
it's relevant.
that's the thing, right? Is you could say that there is
I
no.
could just say I don't know what moral value is. I know it's present in humans. I know it's not present in animals.
Oh, you could certainly.
I know if you remove the history, which was what my whole criticism lies upon.
Oh, but
it still
applies. Look, I thought your criticism was that if you remove history, that the argument doesn't follow, which is to say that it's an invalid structure. But that's not going to be the case because we have these meta identifiers.
What doesn't follow is I can say, right, that a human being is trait equalizable to a non-human human while retaining moral value without contradicting myself, which is possible. And that's what I mean when I'm saying it does not follow, because you can do this without pain of contradiction.
No, that's going to be the problem. Is like, look, what we're saying, right?
So I've made the trait without contradiction, right? Like, nothing I've said so far has been contradictory. You're just saying that if we go through the continuing rest and you corner me on moral value or something, you can corner me in a contradiction, right?
Right. The idea is just that
the specific trait that I've named, I've not contradicted myself.
Look, it's hard to understand you because there's someone piping up and your mic keeps cutting out. But let me just explain what we're getting at when we say that there's going to be a contradiction. The idea is just that this set of propositions we're saying right from the outset confers moral value in the case of X, and it doesn't confer it in the case of Y. But the problem is if we go through this trait equalization process, at some point, right, we're going to be saying that at this point, we either have to say that moral value is a proposition that's just brute of these sets, and so you're going to be saying that you're going to swap it at some point through the trait equalization process, but it wouldn't be contingent on, or the moral value of the set isn't going to be contingent upon that. At which point you're going to be saying that it's contradictory.
On this, because so I'll just say sure, okay. I'll for the sake of argument, I'll say you can. All right, later on, at some point, if you get me on moral value, in the current state that I'm in, I'm going to contradict myself. All right, but in the specific trait that I've named, I have retained moral value without contradiction, right? Without going down further.
Sorry, I'm not tracking what you're saying anymore. What do you mean?
Well, you're saying that I'm going to contradict myself if we continue down this trait equalization process. So we've trait equalized the history, and then you would, and I've done that while maintaining, retaining, the moral value, right? So I've done that without contradicting myself, unless you think I have contradicted myself. So if you want to object here.
No, the contradiction occurs if you go throughout the entire trait equalization process. It's not going to occur at some discrete point.
Okay, so can I
hang on, I would like to ask, what else is there to equalize at this point? Because we've equalized literally into the same object, as you said earlier.
Oh, look,
apart from the meta, equalize the entire object.
I guess if what you're saying now is I just didn't understand what you meant by history. If what you're saying, right, is if we had equalized all of the traits, if that's what you mean by history, then yes, at that point, right, it's necessarily going to be the case that you're going to be contradicting, because you're going to be saying that it now has the proposition of having moral value, but at no point did the contingent component of morality that is like true of the set, like the possible set or the meta tag or whatever, change. So either it's going to be the case that like just moral value isn't grounded in anything, and so we can have these sort of dialectic states, or it's going to be the case that like there's some other trait that we would have to appeal to.
First point in that moral value, because you didn't object earlier when I said I've been able to do this without, contradicting myself. I've been able to take.
Like these people, Isaac.
Yeah. Like I think that the issue is sometimes you use terms like history that are very inaccurate, and I guess I should have been better and more diligent and asked you to clarify what you meant by history.
Well, that's fine,
there's a reason why I'm using like specific terms like possible worlds and sets and stuff like that, right? I don't think that history is a very good term to use in this case. If what you really meant is we're now at the case where the set of propositions true of X and the set of propositions true of Y, which are trans world identities, are the same.
I thought you understood because you agreed with me earlier that they would be the same object.
Sure, they're going to be. They could be the same object, right? I don't know if I necessarily have to. I don't know if I necessarily have to have an opinion on the identity of indiscernibles to make the name the trait argument. I think that, like, regardless of how you feel about there being two identical objects or not, is that this conclusion is going to follow.
Hang on. So we're going to have to get back to this. So let's go back to the beginning and retrace the steps now with a greater understanding. I'm sorry, we just continue on. So, right. So history, nameable trait,
people.
All right, history.
This has been going on for about 45 minutes.
Really? Fuck.
Yeah, it was meant to be a critical analysis of Magna trait, and it's just.
I think that the problem is this sort of critical analysis of name the trait is just going to take this long, because the sort of objections that they're laying out now require us to actually explain to them what we mean by hypothetical construction and possible world semantics, which isn't a light concept. Like we have to be extremely diligent here, because, like, look, their argument on a surface level seems to work. I'll grant them that. The problem is
Isaac's calling us all dumb. So what's the point in continuing this?
Well, I don't think anyone here is dumb. I never said anything like that.
That's what Isaac's saying. So that's why I think we give this 10 minutes.
Look, I'm not Isaac. I'm not here to defend Isaac's behavior. Like whatever Isaac says is Isaac's view, right? I'm here purely as Bryn from Discord, a friend of like Ethi and like an opponent to Magnus on this concept. Like who cares what Isaac has to say? That just seems to be a genetic fallacy, right? You're just saying that there's no use to this discussion because of like where the debaters are coming from.
Okay, so can I just get back to like the start of the?
Yeah, just give it. I'm gonna give this whole thing like 10 more minutes, and then we can like go on to other things.
Sure.
Actually, like, look, let's just at this point, right? I think that I'm going to be talking to Shadow about this soon, and I'd be more than happy to talk to you, Magnus, either on Foot Soldiers Discord, or if you'd like to set up a debate on another platform, we can talk about this like just one-on-one another time.
It's like super interesting.
And I'll let you guys get back to talking about consequentialism. Actually, I'll probably stay in the call and I'll just talk about the with you guys.
I would just like to wrap this up.
But right, what I was just going to suggest is, we give each other like a minute just to clarify what we seem to think that the objection is, and then we'll just move on. And so I'll give you the last word. And so what I'll say is, given what I understand to be Foot Soldier and Perspective and Shadow Starshine's objection so far, as well as yours, is that what it's doing is accidentally equivocating upon what we mean by the set of possible traits. And the way that it does that is by not analyzing the trans world identity. Instead, it analyzes the identity that's within the world. And in doing so, it makes an error, assuming that we're talking about the things that are true of a hypothetical rather than the things that are true within the hypothetical. And so when you end up doing that, you're going to be pointing to things that the trait equalization function, which I actually have a formalized form of, which I can send you to sometime, is just never going to be able to refer to necessarily. And yeah, that would just be what my objection is. It's just like we're not even talking about the trait equalization function anymore with these sort of objections, and so it's not really an interesting objection to what we're saying. But I'll let you get the last word, and then we'll move on.
I don't think what an interesting objection is really relevant because subjective interpretation.
Sorry. What I mean by interesting objection is just that it undermines the position or it rebuts the position. So by interesting, I mean that you've shown that the element, you've either shown that the argument is invalid or non-well-founded.
All right. So I'll give my closing minute then. Now that that's clarified. So. To go through what I have argued here today, name the trait does not follow in the sense that, and I do not know if I may be incorrectly using some very hyper-specific philosophical term there, but let me just clarify by what I mean is that when I say does not follow, I mean that name the trait, version 5, which is the latest version to my knowledge, makes the statement that if your view affirms a given human is trait equalizable to a given non-human while retaining moral value, you can only deny the given non-human has moral value on pain of P not P. So law of non-contradiction. Now, my argument, Shadow's argument, perspective philosophy's argument, and foot soldier's argument has been that you can name the trait, which is history, and Bryn here has conceded that you can name the trait of history. I not conceded, but as allowed, but you can name the trait of history. And then he has also said that we are going to equalize this trait. So we're going to equalize the history of object A and B. And then he also agreed with me during this debate that that would be the same object. Therefore, when we look at the nothingness, the void that has been left behind from erasing object A from existence, from temporal space and time, we see that it is nothing. And if we are to also say that an animal has no moral value, we have to say that moral value has been retained because it is zero, and the trait equalization process has occurred. And then Bryn has brought up things like possible worlds and some very complicated philosophical terminology to defend this. I don't think it gets around the fundamental issue of what I presented, which is the statement does not follow. If we are to, erase an object from history and it becomes zero, then the value is retained. That zero is retained through the trait equalization process, despite Bryn's insistence that at some point it's going to be a contradiction. So that's how I'll conclude.
All right, nice. So that was actually pretty cool.
Yeah, it was cool, except I don't know, because I think what would have been helpful is having that fifth amendment or fifth, version up there, so we can actually see that for ourselves and not being, because there's a lot of people who haven't, I haven't been on any like Discord. I haven't been, I've been watching some of Isaac's stuff, but I'm not privy to that. So I think, to extend upon name the trait in terms of the first version is awesome, but at the same time, we were having all this kind of discussion, and it was like, well, for people without seeing that kind of, what would you call it, trait tree or something, it was a little bit difficult to kind of, it's almost like from name the trait to kind of name this complex hypothetical. It's really been extended upon to the point where, well, I know it's philosophical, but at the same time, is it relevant? And I don't know enough to comment on it, and I'm not going to comment on it. But just from hearing the two different discussions, if you were, say, at a cube of truth or something like that, would you talk like that to a person? Bryn, would you, if you were?
Well, I think what's interesting, right, is you're saying that like the formal argument, which is rigorous for the exact reason that people like this can lobby objections like this. is uninteresting is uninteresting on a colloquial level, right? But that's why the natural language argument exists. That's why like Ask Yourself provides what he calls his dialogue tree, where really all you're doing, right, is asking the common language point here, which is just that, given that you think that there is a difference between these two objects with respect to moral value, what causes that difference? That's like there is a natural language non-modus ponens form which people can follow quite easily.
So you would just say you're at a Cube of Truth or whatever outreach. I'm not really a big fan of AY, but just say you're doing some kind of outreach. Would you propose this argument to someone? Would you talk about it in the way that you were discussing that today? Do you think that will turn someone vegan?
Yeah, I think that these sort of arguments can be convincing to groups of people. Like there's certainly people that like have said that something like Name the Trait, it at least gets them thinking. And so one of the things that Name the Trait's really useful for. So just as like a background, I'm really big on this moral theory called moral sensibility theory, which is just that it appears to be that our morality is epistemically discovered through our emotions rather than our logical senses. And so like if that were the case, right, Name the Trait would be kind of weird because it would be this like purely logical argument. But I think on a deeper analysis, what Name the Trait is really getting at is it causes us to really think about what sort of things we perceive in the world and think about those things emotionally. So at some point, right, you get to the point where someone says something along the lines of, look, the trait is intelligence. And at that point you say, but that's kind of weird because that would say like we could start holocausting, say like 3-year-old children. Exactly. And at that point, the moral discussion becomes one of emotions, where you start thinking about like, how do I emotionally feel about holocausting 3-month-olds? And that's what Name the Trait is useful for.
There is still room for emotion in philosophical debates. I know there's different philosophers who are like, no, it should all be rational, it shouldn't be emotional, we should be applying this all back to logic. However, my position would be there is still room for emotion in terms of philosophical debates. However, what my question is with level 5 of this amendment of Name the Trait, would you do outreach? And the discussion that we just had, or you just had, would you use that to try so what is the purpose of that version of Name the Trait?
Well, the purpose of that version of Name the Trait is for philosophical rigor, because like loose notions of arguments on a face value, right, they can look like what they're saying is logical. Like for example, many theists abuse the sort of looseness of natural language. Like many people who talk about flat earth abuse the looseness of natural language. But once you can break things down into a formalized logical structure, there's a whole set of inference rules which we can determine a priori that seem to decide whether or not something actually follows, and thus if the conclusion can actually obtain. Yeah, so all this version is for philosophical discussions like the one Magnus and I just had.
So for me, what you're saying, what I'm hearing, is already for educated philosophical people.
Well, not even. It's literally
proposed to be something that you talk to a non-vegan about to make them vegan. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah. Exactly right. It's sort of like when you have discussions with people about like physics, right? You can start off by just saying, if I drop this ball, if I like release this ball from my hand, it's going to fall to the ground, and someone's going to say, oh, why is that? And you could say, look, it's because of gravity. And there's a certain set of people who are going to be like, oh, cool, that makes sense, I guess. And then there's a certain group of people that's going to say, but why would that be the case? And then someone's going to say, well, gravity is this thing that like does this. And then below that, like, you can keep going layers and layers down of rigor.
I would have to argue that's a false equivalence. I would have to argue that talking about a ball dropping because of gravity is a false equivalence in terms of discussing this fifth Name the Trait. To the general
all I mean is that there's just layers of rigor that we can go through that certain people are gonna need and people aren't gonna need.
Yeah, and that's what I mean, and that's why I think it's great to have this debate. I think that's great to have this critical analysis. I think it's great to rework everything. We need everything we possibly can. However, I would question what is the purpose, so to speak. Is it okay? So, is the purpose for us to strengthen our arguments when we're discussing this with non-vegans? Because a lot of non-vegans.
No.
They're not the most, like, actually, they are intelligent people, but they just haven't been exposed to a lot of things. You know, I mean, a lot of people that I work with at uni, they're educated people, they're academics, but at the same time, they're not vegan. If I, went into this kind of argument straight away, the fifth paradigm of name the trait, and I was like, oh, well, actually, this is, what have you, they might be like, whoa, what the fuck are you talking about? So I think there's absolutely value for this sort of thing, and obviously, vegans, us being vegans, we are a diverse range of people. I mean, we've got welfareists, we've got people who aren't philosophical, even though veganism is in of itself, I would argue, is a philosophical stance because it's about morality and what have you. But yeah, I just, listening to your conversation just then with Magnus was just a bit, it was Magnus, wasn't it?
Yes, Magnus.
Yeah.
By the way, Bryn, can I just ask you, do you still think I'm straw manning name the trait?
Yeah, I think that it's an unfortunate straw man because I don't think it's intentional. I think that the problem is sometimes like the wording of these things can be loose enough that sometimes you just unintentionally straw man. And so the reason I came on was just to clarify that the notion of trade equalization that it seems like perspective philosophy and Shadow Starshine are operating with isn't actually the one that we mean. And what we really mean is this possible world semantics interpretation, which I sent to you.
Sure.
And that's what I mean. Who was
just to be clear, Magnus, like I'm not saying something about your character. I'm just saying something about your argument.
That's fine.
Oh, exactly. And none of us are criticizing anyone's practice here. Absolutely not. But I guess
that's what I was primarily concerned about. That you were coming on to call me like this evil charlatan.
No, of course not. I'm right from the outset. I'll just say I very, very rarely call people dishonest. I think that the only people in the world that I would say comfortably are dishonest would probably be like Steven Pinker and Jordan Peterson. But like straight, like I don't think anyone from your camp is dishonest. I just think that unfortunately, due to the looseness of language, there is an unfortunate straw man going on where the concept is just being misinterpreted. And so your objection does follow, given it that was what we meant by trade equalization, but that's not what we mean by trade equalization.
All right, so what I'd be interested in then is perhaps at a later point debating whether the actual language you have used supports that meaning that you were trying to get at.
Sure, and I mean, like at that point, right? Like, if I could just give you an explanation of like what it would mean, all that would mean is at best we would need to revise it. But I would be more than happy to have debates.
That would be perfect. If you could revise it, if I could find a flaw in it and you revised it and it was a better argument, like I don't want to destroy the trade.
Right. I mean, that's
it's a simple idea. Like, and it's an idea that can be applicable to anything. It's just moral difference.
Right, and that's this is something that like happened with like Philo over time, right? Like the philosophical vegan wiki is over time the sort of objections that he was raising, like if they followed, it was just like there were just revisions made, and the people that are in the document signed on as having contributed to it. Usually, it's because they came in with an objection that, if it were true, would cause the argument to no longer follow. And so the argument is just reformatted with different syntax so that it retains the semantics, but doesn't have these like surface level objections.
Yeah. So I kind of want to get your take on this, Bryn. We were talking about earlier that, kind of just the reason why I'm not a consequentialist is like, wouldn't it be like a consequentialist view that like if the whole of China were trying to murder you, the only way to not get murdered by China would be to nuke China. Like, I think that would be fine to just nuke China, at least from my point of view.
Yeah, like I don't know why that sort of response wouldn't be available to a deontologist or a virtue ethicist, though. What would be the case for that?
What do you mean? Like
why is that a consequentialist outcome?
Yeah, even
I'm saying it wouldn't be a consequentialist outcome. Like, because
it certainly could be. Like rule consequentialists could certainly say that you would be justified in doing what you're doing.
Well, yeah, sure, but like, there's a lot of consequentialists who I'd say would just think that's crazy. Like, a lot of people talking about like the net well-being will be like, oh, well, that's fucked up to the net well-being, so like you should just sacrifice yourself.
So like one thing that's sort of weird about consequentialists, I guess, is they take it to be a normative system that doesn't translate very well to applied ethics, and really all it's trying to do is offer us a pluralistic set of attitudes by which we could start to understand applied ethical issues. And so the trolley problem is sort of a really abstract kind of sense of this, where it's like, you're already starting to sense, the trolley problem shows us that like we should kind of consider, is murdering someone intentionally, worth 5 lives, and where do we along the line set that tipping point? And I think it's fine for us to be generalizable about those sort of notions, and that's what like a particularist or value pluralist might say is just in some cases, I appeal to this utility in this way, and in other cases I would appeal to this utility in this other way. And so one thing that a consequentialist in that scenario might be able to say is, look, like generally speaking, in most particular instances, I'm not going to say that I should survive if 4 billion people are going to die. But in this case, there is a principle by which I can appeal to that overtakes the consequentialist principle. And I think that's going to be just fine on an applied ethical level, even if our normative ethics don't really track very well with it.
So let me interject here. So I'm a utilitarian, right? Like, as far as I know. As far as I know, agree with what you're saying, right? Like, I'm a little bit illiterate in terms of philosophical, terms, normative, etc. But that's my fault. Anyway, so far it seems, I pretty much agree. Like, if you give me any hypothetical and say which scenario is true, unless it is literally you just saying, maximizing net well-being, I cannot give a definite answer. All I can say is, well, practical situation in most cases, one situation will net well-being over the other, and so that is just generally what I would practically do. But I would say, because say the trolley problem, like, I'm speaking really in basic terms here, but I'm making it clear, right? Like, say killing one person versus a billion people, you had to push one person onto the track to save a billion people. In general, I'd do that. But what if the 1 billion people were all fucking Hitler, right? Like,
right. And that's what the interesting notion sort of conceived in the past, like I would say, like 10 years of particularism is getting at is, it's really difficult to say that these generalizable concepts of, you should save the most people possible hold true in every single case. Because, what if all the people were Hitler? Or what if like the person dying is me? It seems like, just from a psychological aspect, that we have some reasons to believe that we would be wrong in that sense, that maybe we shouldn't save Hitler.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe we should save me. And that's what the particularist or the value pluralist is getting at, is that really when we make moral judgments, we have to make them with respect to the context at hand, and not with these abstract notions that seem to not track very well with applied ethical issues.
Yeah, so this is why I add on to the thing, like, what is most likely to maximize net well-being, because you can't tell otherwise, right? So like you can only do what you think is going to maximize net well-being. Like you can't just actually like, I realize it's impossible to create say a legal system that completely infinitely takes into account every scenario, right? Unless you literally just say do what maximizes net well-being, but that's not practical. That's not specific enough to apply to practical scenarios. So you just do like that's vague rules, and then just make them more specific for every scenario that doesn't that's an exception. And I think it can be very practical but it'll take completely rewriting our legal system, etc. Right? But practical, like does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, particularism is very popular with judges. Like the multiple Supreme Court justices in the states have actually written about particularism. They seem to be a fan of it, because it does seem kind of weird how we apply laws right now. I mean, in sentencing, we're already particularists. So we already think that there should be an element of particularism to our moral judgments. Like we don't sentence the same way every time. We say, look, this person committed this crime, but there are degrees to which someone is actually guilty of a crime, or there are degrees to which punishment will actually be effective. So we take into things like mens rea, so whether or not the person was actually of guilty mind and to what degree that was the case. And we have degrees of culpability, so how much did they think about it beforehand, how much planning did they do, stuff like that, or was there a conspiracy involved in it, stuff like that. We're already particularists in the legal system in certain senses. So there's been sort of this idea that maybe we should even be particular even more so. And one of the more revolutionary ideas, I guess, in justice framework philosophy is that we should switch to almost some form of direct democratic method for crimes. So basically, someone is brought into a courthouse not on any charges, with no notion of what sentencing should look like. And maybe what we should just have is have some form of jury that decides everything about the case, right? So you have or maybe you would separate it out. So one jury decides whether the person is guilty, and then you have one jury that decides sentencing, and so on and so forth.
But does not lead to a problem of the tyranny of the democracy, though.
I think when people say tyranny of the many, I don't really know why that would be a problem. What sort of things do you think you could say to convince me that tyrannies of the many are problematic?
I can give an example. Let's say that there is a minority group that is extremely hated, and we have the system like you're talking about, where we have just the trial by democracy, essentially. And
sure.
We have someone who essentially the entire jury is poisoned against him because he is part of this minority group. Sure. And everything is decided by this jury: his crime, his punishment, his sentencing, whether he's guilty or not guilty. I think there would be an issue with that, in the sense that if we are to give just a power to a mop rather than something a bit more mind independent, like a strong series of laws which are agreed upon, set upon a firm foundation like the Constitution, you would have issues with a poison jury like that just arbitrarily deciding that because someone's a certain skin color or whatever, they should have harsher sentencing or whatever.
Sure. The issue is just how do we prima facie decide on that Constitution in the first place? It seems like the only benefit to that is that it has a static nature. But even in the case of that, you're going to have to appeal at some point to some reason why we should select some Constitution. And unless if you're going to make the case that instead of having some democratic notion by which we construct constitutions, you'd instead have authoritarian notions or technocratic notions, you would have to then give me an argument for why that was benign or why that's desirable.
Someone like a judge who is trained to be impartial, I think, is in a lot more of a reasonable position to hand out judgments than just a random mob dragged in from the street.
Right, but how do we select?
With that.
What we're kind of arguing here is like, a pure democracy where the majority decides literally everything down to the nitty-gritty detail versus a mix of, a bit of, authoritarian where, a higher authority that we decide is worthy of judging these things makes
Exactly.
Well, yeah. When it comes to system of government, I'm more in favour of a republic than a democracy. I think the rule of many has to be tempered by a rule of law, and I would agree with Bryn that there are difficulties, of course, with something like a judge, in that you could have things like aristocrats forming.
Right. Like I mean, if we look at this sort of thing materially, right, throughout human history, all judges have really seemed to do is eventually just serve the interests of either the many, and then we're back at the original problem, or that they serve the interests of a select group that wield power through some like material means, whether it be like capital or
feudal,
or just like feudal systems, right? And so both of those notions seemed like really all we're using the judge for is an intermediary to push the problem one stage further when we haven't really addressed the underlying problems. And so why I was saying that I don't really seem to have a problem with like an authority of the many is it just seems like sustainable systems, at least materially over time, have always been just following the needs of the many. And that what that really means is it's just that we're getting everyone what they want or everything that they need. This sort of notion that like you need republics or that you need like certain sets of authority seems like it's only with respect to keeping hierarchical structures or static norms. And I don't understand why we would want to keep those.
Well, when it comes to hierarchical structures, I think they naturally form. If we were to just abolish hierarchy and have a pure democracy, I think it would eventually form because either you would have someone who's a demagogue, who's smart, charismatic, or can maneuver himself into a position of power where he gains that leverage over people.
I'm very, very skeptical of essentialism. I would want to see why you think that things like those are essential properties. For example, it seems to be the case that in like unfettered societies or for the vast majority of human history, these sort of hierarchical structures didn't really exist. And they seem to have only...
About Rousseau's Noble Savage there.
Right. It's something along those lines. I'm more of, I guess, like a Hegelian or like a Marx.
I do think there are examples of what you're talking about. But I think we also look back to pre-agriculture. We also see very hierarchical societies, especially amongst sex. Sorry, not gender, sex.
Right. And so there can be these material conditions by which like hierarchical structures arise in that sense. But I think once you have means by which you can eliminate those material conditions that are confining behavior, I don't see why a hierarchical structure is necessarily going to arise.
Well, yeah, but I don't think we've reached those means yet.
Right. That's a fine objection. Like that can be the case. The idea then, from like a Marxist perspective, is just that we have to have some form of revolution by which we do make the material conditions not hierarchical. And so in the form of capitalism, that would be, that we revoke capital ownership. And in the form of feminism, that would be that we revoke sort of the male dominant patriarchal structures in society. So, you give women the right to vote, or, you make it harder for men to sexually assault women, so on and so forth. So there are material ways by which you can eliminate those hierarchical structures. And what I'd be interested in is sort of why there's going to essentially be hierarchy structures rather than just constructed hierarchies.
Sure, but I think the issue is that through attempting to solve previous hierarchical issues, we also create new ones. I think as the march of technology increases, the next thing we're going to see is genetic engineering, cybernetic,
You're cutting out. I don't know if it's me or just generally speaking.
I hear it too.
Okay.
Oh, it's probably me.
Yeah, I think at this point we might be talking past each other because like all I
The
mean,
thing
right?
I was raising.
Yeah,
Can
I
you hear
think
me now?
I agree with you, right? That there are material means by which behavior can be constructed such that it causes hierarchies. But the issue is I think once you eliminate those material constrictions, it's always been the case in history that those hierarchies evaporate. They seem to be constructed rather than essential. So I don't know why it would be the case that there couldn't be a set of like a society where, given that there's an authority of the many, that there is a hierarchical structure such that we would find it objectionable.
Well, I think the issue I have is with a bit of your language then, constructed versus necessitated. So
Sorry,
I
I was saying essentialism. Yeah, it was essentialism was what I was saying.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no
I'm
worries.
experiencing a bit of lag. Yeah, the issue I find is that like the idea that you're proposing is a bit utopic.
Oh, certainly.
You know, it's very utopia removed like all material boundaries between each fellow man, and I don't know if that is physically possible.
I don't think it is physically possible, and so I actually agree that I don't think consent is a coherent notion. Like I don't think consent simpliciter exists. But the caveat to that, and the caveat to this discussion is there are sets of like hierarchies that we can say aren't really problematic. And so, for example, like if there was a hierarchy between people who were born 5 minutes earlier than the other set, we wouldn't really say anything of value is going to come out of that. Or, if it's the case that, being a artist confers the same material conditions as being a like factory worker, there's not going to be much of an objection to the fact that those confer different levels of social interest.
You would conceive that certain hierarchies would be acceptable to have around. In fact,
exactly. Like there are certain constructed hierarchies which I don't think anyone has a problem with. We have them all the time. The issue is when certain types of hierarchies have internal contradictions. So like in capitalism and patriarchism, there are internal contradictions. But given that there is no amount of hierarchies that have internal contradictions that are going to lead to their own failure or would act tyrannically, then I don't see why there would be a problem for like the rule of the many.
Well, I do think the rule of the many is that issue of the problem of their potentially arising tyranny of the mob. Like, if we're just going to say that that's never going to happen, of course, it's fine. The issue is it can happen.
Yeah. So the idea is just that like if you allow for the sort of conditions where that can occur. So for example, in like the Marxist case, what they're saying, right, is when communism is achieved is necessarily post-scarcity. So it doesn't make any sense for people to really have like this like poor-rich divide anymore. And there wouldn't really be any capacity for someone to like own more because everyone already owns everything that they could possibly need.
Well, I would object is I don't know if a post-scarcity society is even possible.
I think that we're already there technically. It's just we have a distribution problem right now.
Well, if you mean in terms of production, that's the issue of post-scarcity. Yeah. Like, if you mean just in terms of production, sure, like we went past that ages ago. We went past that in like the 19th century, where we were producing way more food than is needed to feed the entire human population. But the issue will always be that distribution. And he who controls the distribution is always going to be the one who has power over others.
Right. And that's why my view, and I guess like the usual view, is just that the concept of owning distribution is just incoherent. Like it's going to necessarily lead to contradictions internally, and it doesn't seem to be ethical under most notions. So I don't know why we would accept stuff like that.
Well, we accept it because I think it is necessary evil in the sense that someone has to distribute things. And
Sure, but that
and the
why-
awful truth about humanity is humans can be greedy, humans can be awful, and once you get people who realize that they hold power over others because they own the keys to the train, they understand that they can exploit it.
Sure. The idea is just I guess we're starting to get into like prescriptivist notions of like what these sort of parties or distributory systems should look like. And I mean, there's an innumerable set of solutions that have been offered. So one person that I might suggest you look into is the work of Paul Cockshott, who's a computer scientist and ex-financier who has done a lot of work on the computer scientific ways at which we could go about doing distribution. And so looking at stuff like AIs or mesh nets or convolutional networks for offering how we can do distribution just automatically and how that could be just mind independent. But even beyond that,
my question at this point is, if we are going to make humans obsolete, are we ever going to have a society past that point? Are we all just going to be like personal gods in our own little realms? Like,
Yeah, I don't know if we would have something like society as we imagine it right now, because I think what we have right now is problematic on a lot of levels. Really, it seems to me that there doesn't seem to really be anything wrong with the idea that given that we are producing enough for everybody, if we distributed that to everyone, there wouldn't be the same necessity for work that we currently imagine, and that people would just be able to do sort of what they want to do. There doesn't really seem to be a problem with that.
Well, sure, that is a perfectly fine thing to prescribe to the world, which is, distribute food, at a minimum, so that people don't starve to death. That's perfectly fine to distribute, to subscribe to our distributors. I would agree with that.
Yeah.
It's just whether the models we are trying to inject to fix it are the ones that are viable.
Right. That's
the issue with things like bringing in God machines that are going to decide everything for us is, if we make humans obsolete, we might not have a society anymore. We might not have humans anymore. And is it better to have a flawed system in which people suffer a lot in comparison to no system because everyone's been terminated?
I don't really know where sort of what I'm saying like entails some type of like antinatalism or like anti-societalism.
Antinatalism, just the idea that we're going to essentially build a machine which is going to be mind independent, which decides everything about the economy to a minute level.
Yeah,
I think that has some scary prospects.
I don't know why they would be scary. Like, it would just be the idea is just people would be doing what they would want to be doing. If the objection is a society is going to be radically different, that's sort of the point.
Well, the objection is that you are entrusting humanity's fate and all of humanity to the hands of a machine, in the hands of people who were ultimately human, who programmed it.
Right. Yeah, that could be one of the more deeper level objections, right? Is, how do we actually construct some type of like computer scientific method for writing this?
Works?
Sorry?
Isaac Asimov, ever heard of him?
Yeah, I haven't, but I know who he is. I
would really recommend reading the book I, Robot, because it goes quite deeply into this subject.
Right. Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of idealism or fiction. I like to stick to like material things, and so
not a big fan of idealism. What we're going to do is we're going to build a machine that fixes the economy.
Oh yeah, I mean that's what I mean by idealism is these sort of abstract concepts that aren't rooted in history or aren't rooted in a philosophical sense, but. Right, exactly. So what I'm more interested in is, given the set of things that have historically occurred, or the things that have a posteriori been like seen to be truths, what could we construct from that as an entailment? And so the work of Cockshott is just saying, look, this is what AIs can already do. These are the issues that we would have to solve to meet the requirements for distribution. And here's how we should go about doing that. And so he lays out on a material level, functionally, how we could go about answering the objections that you're giving. And so I'd recommend giving him a read. But even then, like the only reason I bring up Cockshut is he's a very recent neo-Marxist, and he tends to think about these concepts on a more like computer level. So it answers the like human subjectivism response. But even then, like if we're crazy about God machines, like the notion that it should be done by humans is agreed upon by people like Lenin historically, who construct what's called the Vanguard Party, which calculates out packaging and parcelment in its own way. And there's certain methods by which they say we could go about controlling those people, either by recall methods, or by making those things anti-democratic, or by laying out like constitutional norms, like you're saying.
Bryn, we can see you're super passionate. You and Magnus are like super passionate about this sort of stuff, but at the same time, you might just have to try to wrap things up just slowly. What do you guys think?
Like I was thinking, I'm trying to moderate some debates on this channel. If if like Bryn and Magnus want to debate like antinatalism or like abortion or whatever, if you guys hold different stances on that, we can set some stuff up.
How are we even able to moderate this shit? Like, you have to be on the same level of knowing what the.
Well, you can mute people. That's what I do if they're like extremely talking over each other. But
yeah, fair enough. I mean, I guess anyone could do that.
Like, what do you guys think? I mean, it's up to you guys, but
I have no issues dropping things.
Yeah, no, it's not about dropping things. It's just about making sure that we have like the right forum to be able to really discuss.
Well, I'm fine. I'm willing to talk to Bryn.
No, I mean, I have no issues discussing whatever the room wants to discuss. I'm happy to sit here until people call upon me.
Yeah, but the problem is we've done that twice, and you guys kind of hijacked the conversation.
Oh, sorry, I don't mean to hijack things. It's just like I like to be very rigorous with topics and very in depth with topics.
Absolutely.
And so I like to break things down into their atoms, and so sometimes that can take a while. But yeah, I'm happy to just be here until people call upon me. And I mean, always if people want to step in, sometimes I can be a bit of a mic hog. So just try and like yell at me, I guess, like you are now.
Well, we're just like gonna talk shit. We're just gonna talk stuff like about the Impossible Burger, some grey areas of veganism.
Sure, that sounds interesting. Let's do that.
Don't you reckon? Like.
Yeah, sure. That sounds interesting. Let's talk about that.
So I actually have an idea for this. Like maybe whoever wants to like explain it can explain it. They can like give their thoughts, and then we can just like go one by one. And, like,
so who wants to start? I'm happy to start with the Impossible Burger. What do people think? It is a democracy. We can act like it's a democracy.
Well, it's just like a plant burger, isn't it? I'm glad that there's a product on the market that people enjoy.
What is their like kind of opinion to have here? Like, does anyone not have a positive?
Well, like Curvey, do you want to explain? Because you could probably explain it better than me. Like,
okay, so my assertion around the Impossible Burger is, first of all, they don't say that they're vegan. So, they are plant-based, which is not a drama whatsoever. But second of all, they tested on 160 rats. Now, that vivisection, that testing was voluntary. They didn't have to do that. So Beyond Burger did not do that. Anyway, so a lot of fans are saying that, the Impossible Burger, that's awesome. It doesn't matter. They're coming from a consequentialist point of view around, well, those 160 rats, that could, save thousands of cows. That could turn, a heap of people vegan in the long run. Whereas, I would say name the trait between rats and cows. Why are rats' lives more worthwhile, less worthy than cows? I would also beg the question around how is a plant-based burger all of a sudden going to fight carnism? Those sorts of things. Carnism is like a massive kind of, culture that we have to deal with. And when we have options such as Beyond Burger, why would we choose the Impossible Burger that tested on a number of rats, not just one rat, but a number of rats, why would we choose that opposed to the Beyond
Okay, so
Burger?
Beth, do you want to chime in first, and we'll go down.
Oh well, I don't know. It just seems very like unnecessary that they would like test on animals when they didn't even need to. Like, yeah, it would like, you know, expand their reach. I'm not sure if that's like the only product they'd have to test on animals, or like, but I'm sure you could just make up for like the loss of like economic, gain from like expanding it just with a more ethical like option. Like I don't know. I don't think that that's really justified just because of like the benefits. I don't think that the ends justify the means all the time, and this is like a situation of that. So yeah.
Magnus.
Well, as the only meat eater here, I'll say I was completely fine with the animal testing, and I don't think it's really an issue of consideration.
Yeah, he was probably the wrong person to ask.
Okay, so I've got a bit of an unpopular opinion, not just, because vegan, but even within the vegan community. I think veganism is on a spectrum, and I know that's like a really fucking unpopular opinion, but I think in order to be practical about veganism, you kind of need to put it on a spectrum, because otherwise, pretty much nothing's vegan. And no, I'm not making an appeal to futility. But if we're going by the, say, vegan society definition of veganism, which is basically,
as practical as possible.
Which is basically like a lifestyle that seeks to exclude, as far as practically possible, all forms of animal exploitation and suffering, right?
Yeah.
So, as far as practically possible, what I see that is just doing your best, right? So if someone isn't doing their absolute best 100% of the time, like if they flick a fucking dog one time, now they're not vegan, like by that definition. So that's why
I think that's a false equivalence. I think that
Stop. Let me finish. So if you put it on a spectrum, then it makes more sense, because then someone can be more vegan than each other, like, because otherwise literally no one would be vegan, unless you're going to say, well, it's not practical for someone to do their best all the time.
I think it's a false equivalence to say that flicking a dog once is comparable to voluntarily using vivisection of
I never said it was.
Rats. No, but that's kind of what you were referring to.
It is comparable, but it's not equatable. Like, I can compare a single drop of water to the ocean. It doesn't mean I'm saying they're similar.
No, but what you said was basically, that veganism is on a spectrum, and we're talking about the Impossible Burger here.
Yeah, so what I was getting to is, I would say the Impossible Burger is, this is a certain line you can say where something is vegan or not, but, I'd say it's pretty vegan, like not as vegan as a typical fruit or vegetable, but
they don't call themselves vegan either.
Well, yeah, that's because they also actually serve like cheese and shit like that. Like, they're not claiming.
Just something that the chat has brought up from Earth Guardian. Apparently, the Beyond Meat taste tests against real meat.
Yeah.
Yeah, I heard that too.
So what's the difference between taste testing with real meat and vivisecting 160 rats?
Well, wouldn't it just be like the different quantity and like suffering, the different quantity and like animals dying, because animals would die from like the taste testing, if I'm not mistaken. Like they buy meat.
That wasn't purposefully done. As in that mince was already mince. I shouldn't say mince. As in those animals had already died. The Impossible Burger actually purposefully went out of their way to vivisect 160 rats.
Well, if I may play the vegan for a second, the argument would be that by purchasing the meat, they have helped support the meat industry. Like, they should have just let it rot, because that way the fucking slaughterhouse would have made a loss.
Okay, so what's better, vivisecting 160 rats or going to a shop and buying some minced meat?
Well, I think someone could use that same argument like against you and like saying what's worse, like this amount of rats being vivisected or like thousands of cows being killed because
Yeah, because one
How
action is
would
better.
thousands of cows
other
kill for a couple
it
of
is a good action.
minced patties?
Huh? Can you say that again?
How were thousands of cows killed for a couple of mince? Like we
Because
don't even know
supporting
how.
the broader industry.
Sorry?
You would be supporting the broader industry by buying those patties. If I may put on my meat is murder shirt.
How?
Because you are going to the supermarket, you're exchanging capital, legal tender, to the cashier, which sends a message to the cashier that meat is profitable. So she goes and buys more stock from the meat store, which leads to more animals being slaughtered to support this industry because it's profitable.
Can I try to clarify your argument here? Like, I think you explained it well, but just to make it so that we're all clear here. So the difference here is like when you're buying something that's say tested on animals, like it's only done once, and if you buy the product over and over and over again, you're not causing more suffering. But I think the important thing to take into account is here that when you buy, say, something that's tested on animals, you're saying like it's kind of like supporting the idea of testing on animals. It's not like it's not a supply and demand thing.
Exactly.
Like, I don't know. It's like what if I killed like a 1,000 human beings to create a clothing line, right? Like you probably wouldn't buy that, not because by buying it you're causing it to happen continuously by buying it, but because it supports the idea that it's okay to do that, and so future companies will have a problem with doing that in the future. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Like for me there's a difference between holocausting 160 rats than
Well, I think more accurately would be Dr. Mengling them, if we're going to do Nazi comparisons.
Sorry?
Well, if we're going to use the term Holocaust, they were vivisected. That's more a Dr. Mengele thing to do.
Do you know what happens when animals are vivisected?
Yeah, they're cut up while alive.
Do you know what types of vivisection exist? Name 4 different types of vivisection.
I can't name them off the top of my head.
Name the one without Googling where they test makeup on. What's that called?
I have no clue.
You have no clue what that's called?
No.
You don't know about Dre's testing? It's the most common vivisection. It's the most common vivisection test ever.
I'm unaware of the term for it.
Well, you just said that you weren't aware of the term.
I know what vivisection is. I don't know what the specific types of vivisection are.
Oh, okay. So maybe it would pay for you to maybe look at the different types of vivisection testing before you talk about it.
I don't know how it's really relevant.
Yeah. You don't know why it's relevant because there's differing types and there's proportionality principles that go in.
Yeah, but I don't know how this relates to what I was saying with the.
Yeah, he was saying
Oh God! Wait. I feel kind of bad. I was gonna ask Bryn if he wanted to. Oh, never mind. I thought he left just because he wasn't getting a chance to speak. I was gonna ask him if he wanted to, but I guess he just had to go to bed. But yeah, welcome.
Vegan Foot Soldier. Welcome to the stream. See him here.
Vegan Foot Soldier, do you want to come and join and talk about vivisection?
That's not what we're talking about here. That was just
Vegan Foot Soldier. If you want to join, feel free. I'll put the link in the chat.
I think it's difficult for people to talk about vivisection if they don't actually know the ins and outs, proportionality principles, and the different types of vivisection. I think it's difficult for people to talk about.
Well, I just don't know why we've gone on to specific types of vivisection when I was literally supporting your point.
Yeah, but you were saying, I asked you to just name one type of vivisection. You couldn't.
Yeah, but I don't know why you were naming me to ask one type of vivisection. How have we gotten onto this topic? We were talking about mice, right, being experimented on,
Yeah.
and called it a Holocaust. And I went, nah, it's more like Dr. Mengele. Do you know who Dr. Mengele was?
I have no idea who that is.
He was one of the most famous Nazi war criminals ever. He's famous for his experimentation on human beings, in particular vivisections, essentially stitching people together.
So yeah, I just think it's difficult when people, to talk about this sort of thing and to compare vivisection to, having, say, mince, what they used as a taste test. It's two completely different types of things, because vivisection is a very complex topic in of itself. Like it's still part of animal cruelty, obviously, and it's still part of animal liberation and animal rights and what have you. But it's a very specific kind of area that, it's basically how the animal rights movement started, is through the Stop Huntington Animal Cruelty mob. A lot of animal rights laws came into effect in terms of ag-gag laws and that sort of thing because of vivisection and animal experiments. And I think it's important for people to, really learn about those sorts of things. And I am very passionate about vivisection, as you can probably tell. And I think if a company has the choice whether to test on animals or not, it's probably not in their best interest. I mean, as a vegan, I don't know if I'm alone in this, but if it's vegan, I don't give a fuck if it's been tested. I don't give a fuck if it's, whatever. If it's vegan, I'll still eat it. I know that sounds horrible, doesn't it? But is that bad, or am I alone in
One
that?
step away from the carnist.
I mean, it sounds a little bit like a contradiction almost, but like if buying a plant would like cause, like if an animal had to get its throat slit open like for a plant, and you knew it was like buying a plant is like the same as buying meat, like as in like, animal suffering wise, like do you think you'd do that? Do you think it would still be ethical to do that even if you had like, maybe some other option, like
In what context? Give me an example, and not some bloody far out there friggin' bloody ask yourself black box have you thing.
Well, let's say plants, like buying a plant would cause the same amounts of animal suffering as buying meat. Like, would it then not matter if you're vegan or not to you?
In what way though? How does buying a plant cause the same?
No, this is a hypothetical. Like, if it did, like they had to kill an animal. Let's say they had to kill an animal to fertilize the soil for each plant.
It's like a blood fruit. It can only be grown like cow
Well, then
blood.
what am I meant to eat?
Well, I'm saying, would it not matter what you eat, like at that point, because it would be causing the same, like, suffering and everything?
I don't know, because I still don't really agree with the fact that animals are forcibly bred into existence and raped. So I'm not really down with that sort of thing.
AMAC asked a question that I kind of put on the back burner, but one has to be done to satisfy the FDA because of the patent for vegan heme iron.
It doesn't need to be satisfied by the FDA.
Well, he's saying, and Bryn also texted me and said the test was done because the FDA wanted it.
Yeah, but it would have been the same as the Beyond Burger, wouldn't it have been?
Well,
it's if you want to reject one of these major food agencies and risk missing out on a massive market. Like FDA is America, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
It's like Food and Drugs Administration or Food and Drugs America.
I think it's Food and Drugs Administration or something.
Sorry, guys, I really need to answer this call. I'll be like 5 minutes. Keep the discussion.
No way.
Sorry.
Right.
No problem.
What do you want to fill the dead air with?
I don't fucking know. So, how do you feel about defending your property? Do you think it's ethical to shoot someone if they're driving off in your car, and that's the only way you'll get your car back?
You see, this is a tough question. I think in that specific scenario, you can specify the hypothetical further, because I would say it's justified to shoot him in a vehicle as a deadly weapon.
Well, what if he's driving away?
It would still be justified. Like, it's why police shoot people out who are driving or carjacking all the time, because if you have a vehicle and there's a pedestrian on the sidewalk and you hit them with it, they're dead.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
most people don't realize this, but a car is a speeding projectile at 100 kilometers an hour.
Yeah. So, like, what if it wasn't a deadly thing?
Yeah,
Like,
so it's still like an heirloom or something.
yeah, they just run away with it.
Yeah, it's like my diamond ring. I think it ultimately depends upon the property. I can see a justification for it.
Yeah. Yeah. Jacob, what do you think about
In before Bryn just jumps in as like private property.
Oh no, he's going to bed, I guess.
Okay.
Who's going to bed?
Yeah, we probably make the distinction between personal and private property.
Bryn is
Before
going to
you comment, because I know you're probably watching this later on. Aha, I've caught you out.
I'll stay on.
Well,
yeah, my died. That's why I left. By the way.
Well, Jacob, what do you think about do you think it's justified to kill someone to, stop them from going away with your property or stealing your property?
Yeah. So I think by now I'm a utilitarian, so I can be either nitpicky here and say, oh well, I don't know, because literally nothing is right or wrong except for this. But in general, to kill someone because they're taking your property, no, it doesn't seem like that's usually the best option.
And
that's the
Effie.
only option you can have.
And Effie, before you bring it up, the difference between this hypothetical and the one with the retard stabbing you in the dick is that in this hypothetical, there's malicious intent.
That happens.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, and I wasn't going to make that hypothetical. I was actually thinking of a different hypothetical that doesn't have to do with the retard, but it still has to do with abortion.
Oh, okay. Are we going to have a 1.5 round electric boogaloo?
Oh no, I want to save it all for the second one.
Oh, okay, but you've got a hypothetical in mind. Can you give a sneak peek?
Well, I think that something that is not sentient and has never been sentient before, and that you plan not to you plan to, or you're going to, because I don't want you to be irresponsible with it. You're going to terminate it before it becomes sentient or whatever. I think it would be eligible for to be your property. If someone was never sentient before, even there's just a human is never been sentient and is never going to be sentient, I guess, which wouldn't really matter if you're going to kill it before, but I think they would be eligible to be property as well. And
I think it wouldn't even be a proper human then. You're essentially talking about a stillbirth. It's like a corpse.
Yeah. Is consciousness an intrinsic trait of a human then? You gotta.
No, he's not talking about consciousness. He's talking about just there being an awareness, like a self.
That's literally what consciousness is.
No. You've got
just sentience, so some sort of subjectivity.
So what you think by consciousness, there's a whole bunch of theories of minds. So you're going to have to be more specific. Are you talking about primary consciousness and secondary consciousness? And this isn't to pick on you, by the way. I was making this error for a long time.
Okay. Yeah, the way I see consciousness is just literally having an awareness at all. You could be...
Well, that would be primary consciousness, and I would reject that as a definition of consciousness, because I don't think that's what we mean by consciousness.
What is secondary consciousness then?
Well, secondary consciousness is, I believe it's defined by features like self-reflective awareness, abstract thinking, metacognition.
Okay, so it just kind of sounds like that's just being more self-aware and yeah.
Well, no, it's more than that, because under your definition of consciousness, a camera would be conscious.
Well, no,
I don't think that's what you mean.
Might not be experiencing something. They could be taking in data, but they're not experiencing that data. They're not having a subject.
Right. So you're adding a caveat onto that, which would be a subject. So what is experience?
It's it's hard to put into words because it's like literally what you are because
Well, it's phenomenological, yeah.
I don't. Yeah, I feel like there's not really a good way to even put it like in better words, I guess.
Yeah,
But-
so I think, for example, like a human zombie that has literally every trait except they're not conscious, like they would outside of their own, like, you know, having a consciousness, they would be literally.
Yeah, but what would they be lacking?
Sorry?
It's a camera on legs that's dressed up to look like a human.
Yeah,
Where
so
would be the subject lacking?
I'll say like a near perfect AI that has literally everything except consciousness. Like, what's the difference there? Well,
Yeah, like why are you calling it a P zombie?
sorry.
Why is it a P zombie? Why is it a philosophical zombie? What is lacking from it that distinguishes it from someone like you and I?
Well, you know, I would say the consciousness, but now I got to define consciousness. So,
Well, yeah, but you were saying that consciousness is just the ability to perceive and have a subjective self. So it would be lacking a self, right?
sorry, what would it be lacking a self?
It would be lacking a self, right? Because
No,
you said earlier that consciousness was perception, and then you added a caveat to that, which was there needs to be something to experience that data being fed to it.
I don't think I said anything about perception. I said experience.
Experience, okay. Right.
Sorry,
But you did mention something about data, right?
Sorry?
You did mention something about data, right?
I'm sorry, one more time.
Data. You did mention something about data.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't get your accent there. It sounded like, yeah, data. I said something because you asked me like, well, what's the difference between say like a camera or robot compared to like a, you know, a human or whatever, right? And like they can be receiving data or information, but it doesn't mean they're experiencing that data, right? So
Yeah. So like that gets back into the recursion of what is experience.
I don't know. I don't think really anyone. Well, yeah. See, I don't mean to
Well,
be.
just like a theory of
I
what
try to be
experience.
right because you could be asking me like what physically is like consciousness, right? And like literally no one knows that so far, right? But if you're
Well, it
asking,
depends on the definition of consciousness, like I said before, because you have things like the Cambridge Declaration of Consciousness, which has three major issues, but essentially they went, yeah, here's consciousness. We define consciousness as X, Y, and Z, so therefore animals are conscious.
okay, I'm just gonna look up the definition on Google and see if that like is exactly what I'm thinking of.
Oh, yeah, it goes way beyond that. Like, if we want to talk about consciousness, we have to start talking about the theory of mind, primary versus secondary. Because, like, the definition on Google is going to be like more the medical one, like unconscious versus conscious.
Definition I don't agree with. Okay, here's the definition on here, like the first one that I see. Consciousness, the state of being awake and aware of one's surroundings. A fucking robot is aware of their like. Now you got to define aware, right? Like,
Yeah, aware. I would say that even that definition, I argued this the other day, in that it's implicit in its meaning that there is a self there.
well, I mean, that would be like the ego, right? Like someone can have zero ego and have no sense of self, but still be conscious. Does that make sense?
But they wouldn't be a one then, would they? Because that's part of the definition. Ones.
Not necessarily. Like, have you ever heard of people having ego death on mushrooms, etc.? Right?
Yeah. But would they be a one then? They'd be one with. They would be no distinction between them and the universe. That's the whole idea of the ego death.
Well, they still would be limited to their own brain. Like, they would still be their own consciousness. Like, they're not actually merging with the fucking universe.
But that's the perception.
Sorry?
That's the perception that they're experiencing because they've disabled parts of the brain to do with ego. But the line between them and the universe is blurred, and they become essentially the one, which is implicit in that definition, is no longer there in their mind. Now, on the outside, we can say, yeah, they're still there. But in that experience, They lack it.
Well, Curvey has to leave soon or whatever, so I guess we'll ask her thoughts on what we were talking about.
Yeah, what were we talking about, sorry?
So this kind of started off by like, do you think it's justified to kill someone to like defend your property or to like make sure that they don't like go off with your property or whatever if they steal something, or like just defending like property rights, like defending your property in general?
But
Yeah.
what sort of property are we talking about?
Well, like if they run off with like a family heirloom or something, like they're not gonna try to kill you with it. They're just gonna try to like run away.
No, I don't think that's cause for killing someone, no.
But what if they're Hitler? Then would you do it?
Sorry?
I'm being obnoxious, but I said, what if they're Hitler? I mean,
Oh, if they hit me.
if
No.
Adolf
chance.
Hitler.
No, they're Hitler. They've got a stash. Like essentially what happens is that they steal your precious family heirloom and then like their hat falls off and it turns out it's like 130-year-old Hitler.
Exactly, yeah.
Look, I really think most property can be replaced. I think if it was, you know, I don't know, I'm going through a bit of stuff at the moment in terms of my animals and that sort of thing. And if someone tried to take one of them, or if someone tried to take, you know, a sentient being, it would be on for fucking young and old. I tell you that right now. But if
I've
it
got
comes
an
to,
interesting hypothetical then, if I could bring it up. Let's say you're a security guard of something like Notre Dame. Let's use Notre Dame because that was recent.
yeah,
And there's an arson approaching Notre Dame, and the only way you can stop them is if you shoot them as they're pouring like the gasoline. So it's like you have to shoot them before they light the match, and it will kill them.
I have to say,
Would that-
I have no idea what the significance of Notre Dame was. What was
Yeah,
the
to be fair, like
It's one of a kind. It's the only survive. It's like one of the only surviving examples of its architectural style. It's incredible. It's unique in that facet. So if it was burned down, it would be like almost 2,000 years of history lost. It's priceless in terms of artistic worth, historical worth, theological worth. It's a major contributor to Paris's economy because it's a massive tourist attraction. Would it be justified to shoot this person to stop them from committing the act of arson?
I don't know. I don't value material things to that degree.
Sorry.
I don't. You know, like if it was my own house and I thought someone was going to set it on fire or something, then maybe I'd kill them. But I have no connection to Notre Dame whatsoever. I don't give a shit. Doesn't bother me. Am I being like what was its role in history apart from being a building?
Well, it's been in the coronation of many emperors and kings. Napoleon, quite famously, was coronated there.
Napoleon? Are you fucking kidding me?
Yeah, I'm not. What really happened?
Oh my god. Okay, then yeah, I definitely don't give a shit.
Wait, what was
You
the
really
thing?
think Napoleon or something?
I think the like it depends.
Oh, it was used to knight You know, Napoleon was screwing.
Okay, we're kind of getting. This is irrelevant.
Oh my
Well,
god.
here, I think like yeah, like materials can be replaced, but like the memories or some of the extrinsic value cannot be replaced. Like if a bunch of people care about something, and well, this is kind of a.
I don't appeal to popularity. Sorry, I have no idea
Well,
what this is done. I could give two fucks.
Yeah, I don't think it's.
I think you're picking up something interesting there, where it's the idea of like Theseus' ship, right? Because like the materials are replaceable. If Notre Dame burnt down, like we have all of the essential like blueprints of it, we could probably gather together some of the materials. Like some of it's pretty rare, like the oak that's part of the roof. But we could probably band together and rebuild down to almost like a perfect molecular level, pretty much.
Exactly.
But then the question is it the same building?
But who gives a shit is what I would say.
I care. I like Notre Dame. I think it's a beautiful building.
Yeah,
I really
kind of like a gray area where it's like whose responsibility is it here to like, you know, is it your responsibility to just not give a shit about things you shouldn't give a shit about, or is it my responsibility to align with that, right? Like, it's kind of like a gray area.
I just don't care. Notre Dame is not on my.
Wait, don't, because when you talk over me, it doesn't work as well on Hangouts. So, like, there's a kind of thing, like, say I value, like, I put extrinsic value on something that's really, like, we need to get past. Like, say I have, like, my fucking grandmother's grave, and it's in place of a fucking highway that will, you know, advance civil, like, people are trying to build a highway over my grandmother's grave that will advance civilization and save billions of lives, whatever, right? It's like, it's kind of more my responsibility to get over the fact that it doesn't actually fucking matter, whereas rather than their responsibility to be sensitive to my feelings, right? There's that's a really obvious example, right? But like, it's a utilitarian you know, perspective, right? Like, what can I say?
Well, here, since Curvey has to go soon and Vegan Foot Soldier has been asking this, thoughts on anal bleaching?
It's not vegan.
It's not vegan?
You
Everyone-
can't be a vegan and an anal bleacher. I'm sorry to inform you. Can't be done. I'm taking a perspective philosophy stance on this. Can't be vegan and have your anus bleached.
Why?
It's just implicit within the definition of veganism. Can't bleach your anus. I'm sorry.
But has bleach ever
Makes
been
sense to
like?
me. I don't see
Yeah.
it in there.
No, it's there. It's in the definition. It's implicit.
Perspective philosophy? No, I'm joking.
Yeah. Now you can't be a subjectivist and you can't have your anus bleached.
You can't be a subjectivist and be vegan. You can't use name the trade and be vegan. You can't be a fucking woman and be vegan. You can't be black and be vegan.
Can't be vegan and be vegan.
Oh my
Can't
god.
eat plants and be vegan.
I personally am not into anal bleaching, but like if it's
What's the actual point of it? Like, I know we're
it's
joking.
not animals and it's not like, then anal bleaching is definitely vegan. It's like the whole is cocaine vegan question. It's like,
It's harming yourself vegan.
yeah, I know. We could get like so deep into these meta ethical fucking.
Look, guys, it's called vegan, not veganal.
Yeah.
Got him there. Wasn't even that funny, Jesus Christ.
Oh god.
Bah
Now,
humbug.
she gets some witty humour.
Bah humbug says anal bleaching is an intrinsic part of the vegan anal bleaching experience.
Like,
Oh Jesus.
I-
All right, I've got to bounce. Hey, Effie.
Yeah.
I was thinking, like, if you still wanted to get together tomorrow morning for a hangout, if anyone's interested, just let me know on my Twit site.
All right, for
If
sure.
anyone wants to like hang out tomorrow morning, probably before Richard's, because I think Richard will probably be streaming tomorrow or something. But if anyone wants to hang out, anyone has some. Because I really wanted to talk about some more kind of grey areas around.
Effie, can you tell like Vegan Games to read like his emails and shit? And like his
Yeah,
Twitter?
I've told Jasmine that you were like legit, and I sent her like the debates, and she hasn't really responded to it. But
Okay.
What would
Alright.
you want to debate him about?
Like hopefully abortion, because that's a topic I'm interested in. Debated it with Effie.
Are you
I might debate veganism with him at a later date because that would be fun. Like the ethics of it.
Oh, okay, yeah. Well, which email did you email him on?
The business one that Effie gave me. If I can...
Oh, did you let Jasmine know anything?
yeah, I asked her what the email was, and then I gave him it.
Yeah, I'll ask Jasmine as well or whatever. But all right, folks, I've got a cruise. Fuck, man, I've had like the biggest head fuck of the day. So
Yep, thanks for joining.
that's all right. Well,
Pleasure meeting you.
know if you want to catch up. Well, it's what's the time here? So it's 6:45 here. So if we were going to do our usual hangout that we were going to talk about with vivisection, what have you, and that sort of thing, that would be 9 a.m. my time tomorrow morning, which would be what time your time?
I don't know. I could look it up after this.
Right now.
It's up to you guys if people want to, like, you know.
I may have some stuff going on tomorrow, but I'll definitely let you know.
Okay, thanks. All right, take care, guys. Thanks for joining.
Yep, see you.
See you, bye.
Pleasure.
Bye.
It is 4:40 in the morning for me right now.
It's 2:40 a.m. for me.
Lightweight.
Is
anyone in the chat still? Like, is Pineapple still there?
Yeah, there's 15 people watching.
Oh,
we got that AY Discord clout because Magnus was debating Bryn.
Yeah. I've started drama for your channel so you can get viewers.
I'm glad. I'm just glad you were like you're a little bit out of pocket with it, so like you don't just get fucking smashed on like the shit Bryn asks. Because I'm like pretty underread on like a lot of meta ethics and shit.
Well, yeah, like he goes into this weird area of like, you know, oh no, it's the like meta identifier, but I'm like, yeah, there's still a meta identifier because we're outside of the hypervertical, and it's like, no, it's also in conjunction with like a many worlds interpretation of time, I guess. Well, I know that's not exact, like, and then there's a semantical element to that. So like, I'm gonna read through like the stuff he's gonna present me. We could probably clear it up later. It's like I don't think it fixes the fundamental issue that I was getting at. But oh well, I'm not gonna talk shit against Bryn while he doesn't have the chance to defend himself.
Yeah, he's talking to Falcon in the AY Discord. I can see on my fake account.
Ooh. Do you reckon they're gonna do like a fucking post-fucking debate stream? We're gonna be like, oh, what a fucking sophist, what a retard.
Falcon's like my worst nemesis because he's the one that made the Ethi and Zuki diss track, and then I made another diss track, and then he cucked into the shadows. And he was in the chat earlier, but
yeah. Is Ask Yourself still in the chat? That's my question. I invited him on, but he cucked.
Let me see. Yeah, I invited him on too. Yeah, he's still in the chat. Let me see. Vegan Foot Soldier and Ask Yourself are in the chat.
Well, like, yeah, Ask Yourself. If you want to hop on, we can give you a link because, like, you've sniped in the chat. I'm willing to debate Name the Trait with you if you want. Like, I have 4 more hours if you wish.
Yeah, maybe we could just set up like on this channel. We could set up a Magnus v Bryn debate on Name the Trait.
Yeah, after his one with Shadow.
It's kind of shitty.
I think the criticism is valid. I think Bryn has like some technical, philosophical rigmarole to defend his position with, but I think some of the stuff he's saying can be fought.
I would love to debate this shit. Just the problem is like I know it's really easy to just say, "Oh, I'm a fucking idiot," but I'm just so uneducated in all the fucking terms that you're using. Like, I know I could easily get it as long as I spoke your language. Like, you get what I'm saying here? It's like...
Well, like, the only recommendation I can give is just read a lot.
Yeah, I mean...
And talk to people.
I'm not saying it...
Like, when it came to consciousness, like, the thing I was nitpicking you on earlier and critiquing you on, I didn't know that until, like, literally 2 days ago.
Every day, thousands of mums are bullied online. Stop this abuse today and donate to Ethi. What the fuck is Bah Humbug talking about? I was donating to me stopping. How is? Oh, is he talking about like I'm pro-choice and I'm like defending women or something?
Oh, probably something like that. Well, they wouldn't be mothers if they were pro-choice, would they? But they would have aborted the baby.
Would-be mother.
Would-be mother. Every day, thousands of would-be mothers are bullied. Seems like a bit of an.
Well, unless they already had a baby.
Mother, really.
Going back to your thing about the consciousness thing, like.
Yeah, so like theory of mind, like I was misusing consciousness, like you were just like a couple of days ago, until I got pulled up on it.
I don't really know if I am still or not, because I need to look into it. But I think there's a you know, I think even most words that we use, like we just know the definition of them without being able to describe what the meaning of it is with other words. Does that make sense? Like we all know what.
Well, we can understand context.
I don't know if that's what I was trying to say. Like we all know what the word "the" means, but like we might not be able to describe it with other words, right? So, like I could.
Well, no, we can describe with other words. That's like why we have such a complex, dictionary, so that we can define every single word with other words. Like,
saying that's where I'm faulting here. Like I'm not articulating myself perfectly here.
Like "the" would just be denoting something, and there we go. We have another word. Like it's just an infinite recursive loop of describing words with other words to describe other words, which is kind of the interesting thing about language. Well, I don't think English is the starting place to discuss this. We'd have to look at more primordial languages like ancient Sumerian, I suppose.
Yeah,
because English is just a fucking mutt.
Yeah, I'm probably gonna go to college or some sort of like extra schooling for like philosophy, just so like I can learn it in like kind of a like
really passionate about it yourself.
Yeah.
The philosophical degree to get you into something.
Yeah.
Like a good recommendation is just learn it on your own, because unlike something like dietetics, or to become a dietitian or whatever, like people aren't going to trust you even if you actually do know your shit on nutrition, right? So
well, yeah, I just want to make sure I have like a good understanding and I like know it from like, from front to back, almost like as good as I can, because like you can read books and you can like school yourself and everything, but I think just the extra like, and I think it would save a lot of time too to just go through it, like, go to classes instead of having to like,
you have to think of all the time that you're going to use.
I don't know about that. I quite like autodidactic learning.
I don't know. I feel like I learn better like in school, but only when I'm like I actually like what I'm learning.
Give a shit.
Yeah, like, and I do give a shit about philosophy. I'm just very underread on it. And I, it's interesting.
Yeah, got to slap you with Plato's Republic.
Yeah, I'm gonna be buying some books like that soon.
I bought some books today. I've got the Tibetan Book of the Dead next to me.
Curvey Vegan was talking about a book where they talk about like, it's basically about veganism, and they talk about like morally gray areas and like how to argue and stuff. And I heard it. She says it's pretty
gray
good.
areas of veganism. Oh, okay.
Like they talk about like abortion and like shit like that also.
Oh God.
Oh boy, is that oof.
I'm gonna make a video about veganism and abortion sometime.
You can't be a vegan and be pro-choice. There, I've said it.
You can't be a vegan and be pro-life, at least depending on the pro-life position. I mean, I guess you could be either. I don't want to make it so like political because I want really.
This isn't political. This is ethics.
Well, I guess I'd want someone to like be able to call themselves vegan even if they're like pro-life,
In before someone starts screaming about how everything is political. See, I'm preempting this shit.
This is why I put it on a spectrum, right? Because if someone is, faulty with one little fucking infinitesimally small thing.
Who are you debating with, by the way? Is it Pineapple Fried Rice? Because he's saying he could destroy your points.
No, that's a girl, and she's too scared to debate me. She's shy. No, I'm joking. I don't know if she's scared, but she just won't debate me. I've told her I wanted to debate her, but I guess she's just.
Well, did you watch the debate I had with Effie Pineapple?
I'm actually glad I had that debate because now I have a lot better description of serious harms. But
good, because your description of it was piss poor last time, like skinning your knee, serious harm.
Well, I don't know about that, but
it's an abuse of terms.
Ask you guys.
It's subjective, okay?
Oh boy. See, this is why you're not a true vegan, Effie.
It's subjective.
I'm going to trust perspective philosophy all over you.
Bro, I'm going to debate perspective philosophy on killing slaughterhouse workers.
Oh God, are you still on about that?
God, Effie,
Well-
you're fucked.
And I'm gonna debate vegan games about it too, and he's gonna get fucking cooked.
Okay, hypothetical for you. Would you be pro-life if the baby was destined to be a vegan and the mother was a slaughterhouse worker?
Joel, just because I hate the slaughterhouse worker, sure.
Okay, there we go. So now all I need to do is make all mothers slaughterhouse workers.
Well, no, like
The
I
next
don't know if I would actually apply that like to a lot of people, but like the difference I would say, because I know Vegan Gains, if we have another debate, he'll make the distinction or say that there's not a distinction between like killing a slaughterhouse worker to save an animal and like killing the consumer of meat to save an animal. And I would just say, well, I empathize with the consumer much more than I empathize with the slaughterhouse worker. Like I see myself in the consumer.
Why don't you emphasize with the typical slaughterhouse worker who's underpaid, overworked, works a dangerous job, and is more than likely from a low socioeconomic background? Like, I don't understand why you would have less empathy for them than some fucking rich yuppie just buying shit tons of meat.
Man, I think it's a lot different when you have actual blood on your hands.
I don't see why.
Well, why? Like, are we to say that Adolf Hitler was more moral than the typical German SS trooper because he didn't have actual blood on his hands?
Well, just because that's the distinction I'd make. I think it's I think it's more disgusting to be the actual monster, like actually.
I don't think that distinction is coherent because it is to say that if you tell someone, if you create a machine that kills animals, somehow you're more moral than killing them directly.
Yeah, so let me interject here. So, for some reason, Effie, it seems like you're making an arbitrary value on...
All values are arbitrary.
Stop. So,
perspective philosophy is just fucking seething if he was watching this fucking stream.
I realize, all values you could say are arbitrary, but I'm saying arbitrary as in, like, it's the same
It's
kind
arbitrary for arbitrary's sake.
I'm saying arbitrary as in the same way someone would say the word absurd. Like, yeah, you could say anything's absurd, right? But I'm saying
sure.
it's arbitrary. Let me continue. So, it seems like you're putting it, arbitrary.
Hey, perspective philosophy is here. Hey, perspective philosophy. Can you be vegan and a subjectivist? Are values ultimately arbitrary?
Actually, if you want to join perspective philosophy, you can join. I was gonna end.
Oh, yeah, that'd be nice.
If you want to
You
join,
missed all the drama with Ask Yourself and Bryn, who I debated.
I'm pretty sure Ask Yourself is still here. Hold up.
Well, he's still here, but he's tucking into the shadows. Like he's not going to waste his time with a. I think he called me like a Discord moron.
Something like that.
Yeah. Okay, can I finish?
Yeah, sure.
He's so busy that he has time to stream snipe, but not to actually defend his position. He has to send his fucking mod in to do it for him.
Okay, for like the third time, can I finish now?
Yeah.
Okay, so what I was gonna say is it seems like you're putting an, fucking arbitrary value onto whether you're directly causing harm versus indirectly causing harm, rather than, how responsible you are for it, right? So, I'd say Hitler was more responsible for, all those Jews being killed than the individual people that were directly doing it because, like Hitler had more impact on whether it happened or not. So, for example, I would say, let's say, me as a vegan applied to be a slaughterhouse worker, right? I know it's fucking weird, right? But I, instead of, being a slaughterhouse worker where I, am unreasonably abusing the animals, like, that has nothing to do with getting the job done, like I kicked the fucking animals. If I didn't do that, if I tried to be the best slaughterhouse worker without, not doing the job, which would just get me replaced, I would be actually reducing the amount of harm in the world rather than just letting someone else do the job. Does that make sense? Like,
Well, yeah. Again, like I wouldn't. That's why my position would be it's only ethical to do it if it's necessary in defending an animal. I don't think you should just shoot anyone you see.
Yeah, but killing slaughterhouse workers isn't defending animals directly, unless, like, you're by that logic. The only way that you'd be defending animals is because those slaughterhouse workers probably eat meat themselves. Like, that's probably why you're defending.
Well,
Like, you'd have to kill literally every single person that reapplies for the job of slaughterhouse worker until no one applied for it. Like, someone's just going to replace them. That's the problem with doing
well, I
it.
guess, but like the specific animal you'd be saving, and I think since I hold kind of a deontological stance on that, and I think their life is worth saving. Doesn't
But you
matter if they're going to be replaced.
because someone
Oof.
would replace that person and kill that animal.
Well, not the same animal if you save it. I don't think you should just kill a slaughterhouse worker and run away.
You're going to save the animal. So
If it's necessary to save the animal, if you shoot a slaughterhouse worker and run away, then I think that's unjustified. Like, why the fuck did you shoot him?
okay, well, you didn't say that to begin with.
He's not an unjustified terrorist.
Well, I'm not sure if terrorist would be the best term, but
Oh, okay. You're not an unjustified.
hold on. Let me look
freedom
up the definition of terrorism, and I'll tell you. Isn't terrorism like terror for like a political gain? Because I don't see how this would be for
It's just
political
like
gain.
unlawful use of violence and intimidation.
All right. Well, I'm not sure if I would use intimidation, and it would be more like defense of another. I wouldn't say that's for any political gain. That's just
Well, yeah,
a
but you
defense.
want to intimidate slaughterhouse workers to stop being slaughterhouse workers, right?
Well, yeah, that just by being vegan, I wouldn't say, "Oh, I'm gonna shoot you if you're a slaughterhouse worker."
Except when they're doing their job.
Well, if they're crazy enough to not run away when they see a vegan with a gun and they try to kill an animal.
Yeah, like that's kind of terrorism because you've got an implicit threat there, which is I'm going to shoot you if you do your job.
Well, no. If you could say the
Well, but
same
that
thing
logic-
about shooting a
There's an
Nazi.
empty threat then.
By your
Isn't
logic of terrorism, that would mean going to war against Nazi Germany is terrorism because you're
Yeah.
with death if they do their job. So, you know.
What? Sorry, what? Like, yeah, the Allies did lots of terrorism tactics against Nazi Germany,
fair enough.
like strategic bombing, specifically like the propaganda we would drop. We did lots of terror tactics. We used commandos to cut supply lines. The British did something quite infamous in North Africa, where they put up signs around every single water hole that said, "This water is poisoned." So the Germans were, oh fuck,
No, I'm fine
all
with
of the
that.
oases that we would drink from, they're poisoned. And they complained about it, that like the British did a kind of slight trick of hand where they didn't actually poison the water, they just said they did, which made them like fulfill the international treaty around poisoning while still getting the intended threat. But yeah, I would call a lot of those tactics terrorism.
Okay, so my point in pointing that was not to because it seemed like you were implying that terrorism is intrinsically bad, right? So, like, because you made the point, oh well, it's terrorism. Well, so that's why I brought up. Well,
Yeah.
Terrorism is just a tactic used in the aim of a political goal. Like, I think it's often bad.
Yeah.
Justify it, like, as the old trope goes, your terrorists are our freedom fighters.
Yeah, exactly. And I think Pineapple raised a good point. Just tase them or something instead of killing them. And that's the point of the hypothetical saying if it's necessary. So, like, if you had a taser and you could use it, then go ahead.
Tasers are shit. Like, it could just bounce off him, or he's like resistant to it, or it's like a big cake.
The probability definitely matters. Like, if a taser is not going to be effective, then I don't know. I don't think it would really be practical to be like.
Have you seen like those videos of like those like super like fat dudes or those super muscly dudes who like get tased by the police and they just don't give a shit?
Yeah, I watch hella fucking graphic shit like that, and it's fucked.
Why? Why you make it sound like you watch this regularly?
Well, I run a meme page on Instagram. I've seen some pretty fucked up shit.
The state of memes in 2019.
I've seen somebody get their arm cut off. I've seen multiple people get shot in the head.
Real or Walking Dead?
Real.
Okay. So actual gore.
People with their fucking guts out. All sorts.
shit, dude. Doesn't sound like it's good for your mental well-being.
Well, no, when someone posts it, it's kind of hard to look away if you're just scrolling through Instagram. I don't say, "Oh, I'm gonna look at some fucking
You
core."
follow people that post that shit.
Nah, man, you got to embrace it.
Yeah, you gotta be.
Ever.
It's motivation to own an SMG,
Exactly.
and that's exactly what I'm gonna do, as long as it doesn't have any animal products.
It is the thing. Is it like a lot of the fucking grease you use to clean guns, like the oil? Isn't that got animal products in it?
Meh, I don't know. I'd have to look into it.
Plant oil
So
extract
that's the
instead.
distinction
You
between.
use like fucking soy to clean your barrel.
So,
Nah, you don't want an SMG. Like if you're that close, you want a shotgun, and if you're finding any further away, you want a proper rifle.
well, an SMG, like, I'm pretty sure an SMG is like a lot. It has a lot more range than a shotgun, doesn't it?
No, depends on what you're filling the shotgun with.
Well, I guess.
Like an SMG is essentially just pistol rounds fired automatically. Like,
Well, yeah, but I feel like an SMG is like valuable because you can just fucking spray anyone around you. So if like a whole gang of people come up and you have a shotgun, I feel like that'd be kind of a little bit less effective if they're still going to be coming at
yeah,
you.
sure. But like the thing is with a shotgun is that you're saying you're going to spray SMG all over the place, but like you're going to hit fucking no one because you can't control
Well,
the
sure, but you can just go like fucking focus on one person, focus on the other person, focus on someone else. Like,
yeah, but at this point you might as well
Control
use
in
something
order
like
to
because
focus.
you don't need the automatic rate. You could have like a cycling shotgun.
I mean, yeah, you could get like an automatic shotgun, something, make it kind of equal.
Yeah, if it's like a concern that you're getting like gangbanged by like 16 dudes, you could buy like
Yeah, like, did you see that video that I posted in veganism debate? This Asian dude and his wife and like his kids in the car, they like accidentally, this whole biker gang was in front of them and a biker like stopped in the middle of the road and he accidentally hit him, and then the whole biker gang stopped, and the dude in the car thought that they were all going to try to fucking attack him, so he just speeds off and he like almost kills another biker, and then they're all just driving after him, and then they end
up. By the way, may I recommend you a YouTube channel?
Sure.
It's a guy called Vickers Tactical. Essentially, what he has like really super cool cameras, like really expensive, good cameras, and he essentially does like super close zoom ins and slow mo of guns firing, and it's just beautiful to see the mechanics of how they work.
Yeah, but like I was saying, like that'd be fucked if you were like in his situation and you're like just driving away, they fucking corner you, they're like smash out your windows and shit, and that's what they did. It's like, oh fuck. Kind of need a gun in that situation.
Yeah, I don't know if you would need an SMG though. Like, I think the niche for SMGs filled are kind of done. Like, they had to use, like, the assault rifle kind of does what the SMG does, but better.
I think that there's like a visual appeal of the SMG though. That's kind of why too.
Yeah, you can always have that gangster look with the Uzi.
Yeah, something like that.
Can I bring up a question?
Yeah, sure.
I'm just curious. Do you guys find any contradictions in the utilitarian philosophy?
I find rule-based utilitarianism is the perfect blend of like being specific and having general rules.
Okay, so you are a utilitarian, so I
guess I am a rule-based.
Yeah, you obviously don't disagree with it.
Yeah.
Do you find any? No, I'm not saying whether it's right or wrong. I'm saying, do you find there's any contradictions in utilitarianism?
Are you asking Magnus or me?
He
just asked me. He's asking you.
Yeah.
Oh, well, you'd kind of have to define what you mean by rule-based utilitarianism. Utilitarianism, like.
I said utilitarianism.
Oh, well, probably just. I don't know if I'd see a contradiction in it because I think you can hold true to utilitarianism and also hold true to something else. Like, I don't think you have to like every single like thing. Maybe I'm like a little bit of a particularist in that way, but I don't think you always have to like go with one metric. Like Like you always have to look at it from a utilitarianism point of view. You know.
I'm asking whether there's
But like, wouldn't
utilitarianism.
you say that utilitarianism would be contradictory to deontology?
Well,
in that
no.
respect?
I'm not saying
like,
whether.
do you have a hierarchy of systems? That's my question.
I kind of I think I do have a hierarchy of systems. I think probably the main one would be probably deontology almost, because I just kind of relate to it. Like, and if you play The Last of Us, like that's kind of like a really good perspective of deontology, and like, you know, in that situation, like.
Do you want to have a deontology versus utilitarian debate after the abortion round 2 electric boogaloo?
Well, if I need to look into it a lot more, but eventually, yeah.
Yeah. I don't like deontology. It's a bit silly in my mind.
Okay, let me bring up another little topic here. So, I think this is a big difference between me and a lot of other vegans and stuff like that. So, and actually,
just perspective philosophy. No, yeah, you're free to join perspective philosophy.
Oh hell yeah.
so what is I was gonna say? Oh yeah, a big difference.
You lectured on objectivism and moral realism. You subjectivist. I would call you a vegan.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
No, we can hear you. You're a bit quiet though.
Quiet?
Yeah, you're a bit quiet.
Okay, so maybe that's why you. I feel like you guys were just like purposely talking over me constantly, because I think. Okay, yeah, I don't think you guys were aware that I was talking at certain points.
Oh, my bad. I think sometimes we just don't hear that you're talking. Like if we're talking, we don't hear you're talking. So
Yeah, exactly. So I'll turn off my camera. So
Yeah, like
off my
sorry,
nostril.
I do. Like,
Yeah, I swear to God, I thought it was on purpose. I was like, man, these guys are dicks. I was like, geez, like,
yeah, fuck that dude.
No. Okay, fair enough. Yeah, I just noticed the little like green thing was like a lot smaller than yours. So, anyways, yeah, I was gonna say a big difference between my ethical views and high perspective philosophy. By the way, a big difference between my and a lot of other people's views and ethics in that is, I find people generally say that nobody has an obligation to do right, but everyone has an obligation to not do wrong. And, from a utilitarian perspective, I think you can see why I think we all have just as much of an obligation to do things that are right, rather than just obligations to not do things that are wrong. And
I don't know if I accept that. I think we do have an obligation to do what is right.
Yeah, I agree, but in a practical sense, I do kind of agree. Like, it's a lot easier, and I think it works out better to make rules more on the idea of not doing wrong things rather than making people do right things, because then, like, I don't know, you're restricting freedom to a point, and I don't
just interrupt. You're talking in like terms of policy?
Sorry?
In terms of like policy, like if we wanted to, for example, get people to stop listening, like, is that what you're talking about? Hey, perspective!
No, I'm glad I got that working.
Gets up from the ground.
Just been like doing some rewiring there.
Yeah.
I better get dressed. Hang on.
I'm only going to pop by for a short time. I'm supposed to be editing me Peterson debate review, Peterson Zizek debate review. But yeah.
Heard Zizek picks his nose quite a bit in the debate. Can you confirm that?
Oh God, he doesn't pick his nose. He just touches his nose. Like, he just constantly touches his nose. Like, throughout everything he does, though, it's not even just like I think they were both quite nervous. I don't know if that's why he was doing it. Like, but
I'm pretty sure it's like Tourette's or something, and that's one of his tics.
Is it? Is it? Because he's just like he constantly touches his nose. I was like, bless him. He's just. And then, but Peterson was quite.
Tissue. Fuck's sake.
I know Peterson's touching, not touching his nose, but he seemed quite nervous. He was at the start anyway. But it was, I loved that debate. It was such a good debate. Like, did any of you see that, by the way? Not to interrupt your conversation.
I've been very busy.
I haven't watched it.
Oh, so good. Like, I mean, don't get me wrong, it's been absolutely heavily criticized. Like, people were like, "Oh, this is pointless." Like, it's because like the communists are really mad because they didn't hammer home that communism is the best thing ever, and the capitalists are really mad because they didn't hammer home that capitalism's the best thing ever. And if anything, both of them were like, "Aye, everything's canny shit." But what they really got at though, and I really appreciated, is that they focused it on happiness quite a lot. Peterson started like his whole introduction. It was just an attack on communism, on the Communist Manifesto. It was just like, here's what's wrong with the Communist Manifesto. And then Zizek's introduction was just an absolute monster of an essay. Like, it was just like half of Western philosophy brought up in a neat little package. It was actually really good. The essay. I think even if you're going to watch one thing, just watch Zizek's like opening statement. It was actually profound. So it was pretty good.
So Bryn was in here earlier. Him and Magnus were kind of going at it.
I'm supposed to be debating him. I don't know if it was supposed to be today, but I'm worried that it was.
I got to him before you did, so.
No, he got to Magnus before he could get to you.
Yeah, pretty much. Like, it just spontaneously fucking happened.
I think I might have to rearrange because I think I've penciled it in the wrong day, and I think I'm not going to be able to do it at 6 o'clock. But anyway, what happened anyway? Like, I wanted to ask about.
Essentially, Jacob, I'm pretty sure, was asking like, what are the problems with name the trait, and I started breaking it down, and then Bryn suddenly just emerged and went, "You're straw manning, name the trait," and then we discussed from there.
What were your criticisms?
On reflection, I think his use of the word straw man, because he conceded in the end, but I wasn't malicious in any intent. And I want to hear your thoughts on this, guys. Would you say about saying someone is using a straw man implies a certain sense of malice behind it?
It can. I mean, sometimes it's not necessarily malicious. Yeah. I think you could accidentally straw man.
But it just seemed to me that when he joined, he was like, he was like going, you're straw manning NTT, in the sense that I was lying about it.
Well, let's work out whether you were or not. What did you say about it?
I essentially said, you can watch it later, but to sum it up, what I essentially said was, name the trait either breaks the law of identity or does not follow, if we are to say that we name history as the trait. And I went through this with Bryn, and Bryn was like, yeah, you can name history as the trait, and yes, we're going to trait equalize it. But then where it kind of falls apart for him and me, because we agree up to that point, is I say, all right, so they're the same object. And at one point he agreed with that. I mean,
there's a lot of identity of indiscernibles.
Yeah, because at one point he agreed with that, and then another he disagreed with that. And we started, talking about this, and I went, well, we are to say that if we have object A and object B, and then we equalize the history of object A and object B, we always had object B. There was never an object A. We have just temporal space. That object never existed. Mm-hmm. I mean, he said, no, it does exist, And I don't want to like straw man him while he's not here to defend himself. But like, he was saying stuff like the meta identifier, and like, you can't do this because you're using like things meta to the hypothetical. And he got into stuff like many worlds and like semantics of that.
Oh god, many worlds. Well, here's the thing, right? Because I'm sure Ask Yourself made this point about many worlds.
Oh, Ask Yourself is in the chat.
Well, if let's look at it like this. So if there are many worlds, and all of these, like, what did he say? It's like that. In fact, it would be a second world almost produced, in which this new object would emerge.
Just to be clear, I don't think he was referring to the many worlds theory in particular, but I brought that up as like if that was what he was generally talking about, and he agreed that.
But it still doesn't follow, because what we're talking about is numerical identity. This is the point in which if you say that the same metaphysical object is if you talk about a metaphysical object being the same as itself, like one, A equals A, or one is one, whatever you want to do, then it must follow that it is the same object. If you were to create a second world and say that these were both the same object, either the same object then exists in two worlds, or they're two separate objects. That's just the way that works. That's numerical identity. Don't get me wrong. There's other forms of identity. For example, if I was to talk about humans,
are you familiar with like the trait equalization infographic he has?
Yeah, I think it's just like he's clinging to a dead argument. That's the issue, right? It's. I'm all behind argument for marginal cases, right? But he just likes to think, and he thinks that he's made it strong.
Because he's still online on like Ask
he can come and talk to us if he wants it. I'd love to have a chat.
Oh, that would be good. Yeah.
But
Jeremy, please.
But the argument for marginal cases is it's a good argument. It's a solid argument. What it shows the inconsistencies in an individual's position just as much as name the trait would. The only difference with name the trait is that it's trying to point out that all cases that aren't vegan would be either inconsistent or absurd. As he kind of
do that, I don't think it ever did.
That's what he argues it does.
There was a weird thing about like Bryn like kind of dodged around the answer. Was like he agreed with me that I could name the trait of history and like we would perform trait equalization on that, and then he agreed at one point it was the same object. He disagreed at a point, but it was the same. It wasn't the same. But then at one point I tried to pin it down and say, all right, so I'm going to say this is the trait, and this is the only trait I care about. I can do this right and retain moral value through trait equalization without contradicting myself. And he kind of dodged around that because, like, he went, well, no, because we would perform further trait equalization, and eventually you would contradict yourself because I'm all right. And I'm saying, well, like, I'm not going to name any further traits or anything because, like, I could just say I don't even know where moral value is. I just know humans have moral value, and that's entailed in the history of the human. And then I know animals don't have moral value, and that's entailed of the history of the animal.
Well,
and then
it's not. I mean, this is the thing. It's that the identity of an object is in relation to what it is, and what it is a historical construct. It's a concept through time, isn't it? I mean, let's be honest. That's how we know anything.
Of history, he thinks it's inaccurate.
But I don't think you can point towards an object that you don't use history because anything else would be A. I mean, if we look at how much of what concepts are actually historical developments. I mean, if you look at someone like Hegel, you would argue this. The words we use to mark and understand objects, they're not abstracted from the object, they're constructed and then applied to reality. So if I was to say, like, for example, like I see a computer screen in front of me, how do I know the difference between a computer screen now and a computer screen like so many years ago? LEDs, LCD, plasma screen, whatever, and another kind of screen, and all of these are different concepts merged together in a conceptual web, and each one of those is built around human understanding, and human understanding comes from experience, and that's the only way that we can really gain knowledge. It's not like I've internalized from what's in front of me that this is a computer screen. I understand it based around the concept formation I've had throughout my entire life, and then the logical links it has with other objects. So I don't think you can divorce any concept from its history, because then you'd be alienating it from what actually makes it the object it's supposed to be conceptually.
Well,
yeah, especially if I can
project into the history of another object, then it would just be that object.
Sorry?
So it seems to be like, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm just trying to simplify it so that we can all understand here. So perspective philosophy, are you trying to say that by, are you trying to say that history includes all the traits that actually make what something is? Like,
no, I'm saying that identity is in relation to to the concept in which is being applied. I mean, it depends on, like, I mean, if you were just to identify something as A, you know absolutely nothing about it, right? So you'd say that, all right, this is A, this is B, this is C, you know, whatever you would do, you could make, you know, base like divesting numerical identities around any object. That's fair enough, and that would allow you to like essentially objectify it and hold it up. But you wouldn't be able to say that, you know, for example, if I was to point at a human and say that is A, there'd be nothing within that human that would allow it to be logically connected to another human, unless I had the concept humanity, and that concept of humanity would be in relation to every human I have experienced an interaction with, and logically connected the concept of why I divested the identity in the first place. So I'd be like, that is a human because it holds properties A, B, and C. Do you see what I mean? And that would relate to the phenomenological experience that we're
I really do not follow. Like, I don't know. Maybe it's just me. It's just like
I might have to go.
I don't see it as complicated as like you guys seem to make it out to be. Like,
well, it's like,
but when you remove the history of something, like
you can't remove the history of something.
Yeah,
if you remove the history of something, you remove the something.
That's the point. Yeah, you've destroyed the identity.
So,
like, imagine, all right, we have a TARDIS, all right, and we go back in time and we kill your grandfather, all right? You're just obliterated from existence because of causality. Well, it's not like an explosion. There just never was you.
I think more so than that. Let look at it like this. Like, just to kind of quickly give, like, I'm gonna have to go, but if you were to understand anything, like if you look at like Locke's epistemology, he argues that you only understand
experience, right?
What? Sorry.
It's based on your past experience.
It's based on your past experience. It's based upon like that knowledge that you've stored, and then you gain new knowledge and you make new conceptual links. And this is what's called conceptual growth. But we don't start from an absolute baseline, do we? When we learn words which already associate meanings with various objects within my language. And this is why concepts grow and become more complex through time in general. So, for example, a lot of the time, he says some of the simplest forms of identification actually come from particulars which have been built up and generalized through time. So he says, like, for example, the laws of logic are actually more complex than the particularities of base identities, but they've grown into these complex laws which we can make, you know, assertions about. Same with the laws of physics. If we look at like the Newton's laws of motion, you need to understand what a physical body is and make inferences based around concepts involving physical space-time that have been built up of various experiences of individuals. It's the same thing with any identity.
Well, since you have to go, I was wondering if you were still down to schedule that debate we were talking about. I can't really find anyone to do a 2v2 with vegan gains, but we can just do a 1v1 if you know.
Yeah, I'd be definitely interested. I'd definitely be interested. Sorry, dog's going off on one. But yeah, like it was on whether it's justified to kill slaughterhouse workers in defense of animals.
Yeah.
I'd happily do that. I'm gonna have to go now, but we'll arrange it. Just message us on Discord and we'll sort that out.
Okay, for sure. Thanks.
Yeah.
Before you go to perspective, are you still interested in having that debate/discussion on metaethics? Because I'm getting a lot more confidence in my ability to discuss that topic. If you want to do it.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Whenever, man, just give us a message. I need to talk to Bryn. Actually, I've just reminded myself, so I need to talk to Bryn and talk to him about this debate. And obviously, we'll arrange whenever you're free. Yeah.
Yep. Awesome.
Okay. Well, it was nice talking to you, lads, and have a good day.
Yep. You too. Thanks for joining.
All right, I'll be right back because I need to take a fucking piss.
All right. I think when Magnus gets back, we're gonna end this because I don't even know how long this has been, but perspective and I will convince Magnus of realism. Well, I think perspective philosophy will convince you name the trade as a fucked up argument. No, I'm joking.
Okay, yeah, I'd still like to be convinced that it's wrong or whatever. But
Yeah, I don't understand all the criticisms.
so I'm trying to what I was gonna ask is like I think at some point someone here mentioned like while perspective was still here and everything that I think someone said that there's no trait that would not lead to veganism. I don't know if anyone has held that point. Like, has Isaac ever said that? Like, I think even he's admitted, like, you could just appeal to speciesism and be consistent. Like, I agree with that. Just doesn't.
Yeah. It seems like it's either you're inconsistent or you're absurd is kind of how they're trying to frame it, but
Well, yeah, I mean, I agree with that. Like, that's pretty much how any logical philosophy goes. Like,
yeah, but here's the thing, like, I don't really like it when they're just like, "Oh, well, you're absurd," and then it's
but
kind
what
of
are you
just like,
supposed to do
whatever.
beyond that? You can't.
Well, you can still discuss it, and you can discuss the benefits of, even something closer to veganism. You don't have to just be like, "Haha, you think it's okay to Holocaust retards." You can at least get a little bit, like, closer, maybe through some arguments that lead a little bit closer to veganism, even if it's not straight veganism. Like, if all you can get is someone to be plant-based, that's better than nothing. So if they can't be
animal
but the
liberation, I am a moral realist. There's nothing to convince me of.
All right, well, I think I'm gonna end the stream because it's fucking 3:30 a.m. for me, and we've been doing this for a while. I know. I'm sorry for anyone who didn't really input a lot to the conversation. I didn't really input a lot, but we have place and I'll have a place and time for that. But yeah, I'm gonna have a Ben Shapiro video up. I'm probably gonna start working on it tonight, and it'll probably be up sometime tomorrow, maybe. So yeah, thanks to everyone for joining. Thanks to everyone for watching. Have a good night, Jacob.